I'm at a different home, visiting the folk, Texas. What? Great week in Texas. So we're dealing with some a cold front. Thankfully, Houston's dodged most of it, but Austin and the rest of it's getting slammed. Like literally trees freezing, falling over. So global warming, yay! And on the note of global warming, just this random tangent. Apparently, there is a push to recreate mammoths by modifying the genes of babies and elephants or something. They're going to make elephants give birth to mammoths, which will then go and graze the tundras in the Arctic, creating greenlands that will absorb carbon dioxide and lower the temperature, supposedly. So mammoths are going to be our temperature lowering mechanism. Didn't see that coming. Huh. Yeah. Thought that was- Hmm. Hmm. Fair. Hmm. Mm. Being in California, I have no right either way, I think. We usually when I complain about the cold, it's like 60. It can. In the valley, it can hit like 110 on like, a really peaking kind of day. But it's not that common. Mm. Mm. The ultimate question, isn't it? Pushes you off a bit. Hmm. I have not. I don't think. No. Hmm. 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 The Pico VR, is that the was that like the 8K one with the extended field of view, or is that something else? I see. Hmm. 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 Mhm. A trope to me, in layman's terms, is something that is familiar, tried and true, um, and just occurs as like a fundamental method of storytelling or character exposition or something like that. But basically, something that we're just used to seeing happen over and over again, for better or for worse. Hmm. I think the most readily accessible one is probably the damsel in distress, which is a device in which you can get a kind of cheap sense of empathy from the character or some functionality to have somebody save someone else. And in them saving them, they appear as a hero. But this is one that you might consider kind of a cliche or a bad trope, because it sort of objectifies a gender and doesn't really provide the hero with outstanding skills other than the sort of gentrification of the action. Yes. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Oh wow, I didn't know that. Hmm. Hmm. Right. Right. So the poll might be. Right. That's great. There's probably so much stigma around girls playing games. It probably wasn't seemed ladylike or whatever to get into. And most games are like violent or somehow action oriented. So I was like, oh, you can't do that as a woman. It's a man's thing. Hmm. Hmm. Right. Right. Soldier of Fortune being a big one. Dismemberment, guts, and adaptations. Hmm. Hmm. Although- Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. No, actually, I'm really just stuck to FPSs in general, and then as of late, just the multiplayer player part of it. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. 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 It seems like that whole thing of NPCs existing just for you to kill them is like widespread. It seems like it's been difficult for people to solve it in general, where you don't often feel like you've walked in on some spontaneous moment, as if you're watching an operation go down and you're there to come and fuck it up. It's really like, no, they're just there for you. They're not doing anything other than waiting for you to engage them and then eventually die. Right. Hello.
Hey. Yeah,
What's wrong?
I I have a well, so my dog was sick, and I had AIDS, but I got better, and so
Oh
now
gosh.
no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding about my dog. My dog is fine. Don't worry. Oh, sweet Lord, baby Jesus. Um, yes.
Mm.
I never really lost it. It was just behind the couch. Um, but yeah, we had a major issue with communication masts all over Arizona, and they suspect actual sabotage.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I've been today. I drove from Flagstaff all the way down to Baghdad, which is a mining town here in Arizona. Just getting communication masts back up and running.
Whoa.
So yeah. For everybody using OTA internet in the county and then some, you're welcome. And I'm kidding. They pay me very well for what I do, but it was
So you're welcome.
but also, yeah, you're welcome. But no, man, it was really wild. And then there's a rogue Verizon call center, so that's fun.
What does that mean?
So there's a call center for Verizon that has gone off the reservation, if you will, and they've decided that they're going to basically just call people up, say we need to verify something in your account. I'm going to send you this SMS message. You have to click on the link. It'll take you to a page where it'll generate you, this thing, and you have to read it back to me to give me access to your account. And they log in and order about $15,000 worth of iPhones.
Oh my gosh.
And this has been happening also all day today. So I dealt with 17 of those while driving around fixing 3 different communication masts.
That's insane.
Yeah, yeah, it's a bit. I should start a Patreon just so everybody can pay me for the work I do, on top of the payment I get, for the work I do. Or do you have a link for this thing that I should? Are you using Streamlabs? This the streamy thingy. Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah.
I am contractually under an NDA, but I will tell you they were in fact tampered with. I can't tell you how, but I can tell you that yes, in fact, cell phone service for one provider was down, and also the internet in general for every one of our OTA companies, of which there are a lot because there's a lot of rural communities here. Yes, it was wacky, but it's working now. Yeah, when we're off air, I might violate my NDA, but not on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would never violate an NDA on air. Anyway, I'm kidding. I just want them to be nervous. I want them to wonder. Anyway, Yes, because then everybody can see my sweat-ridden face, just riddled with sweat. I I do apologize in advance if there are any children watching. You should be very afraid. Oh, you know how that goes. You know how that goes. I'm not going to get into specifics, but there may have been a lot of 18 plus websites that I was browsing when I was not 18. Well, that's a circle of life, right? It moves us all. This is what Elton John was singing about. Yeah, exactly. Nailed it. All right, let me get the doc open, and I do apologize for the interruption to the flow of the things.
No
But
worries. Good to have you.
boy, it was just a day. But anyway, moving on though. You know what else? You know what else blows me away? Is tropes.
Hmm.
Tropes blow me away. You like that segue? That segue blew you away. I can tell. Well, no, now I'm segueing myself into the situation. See, so I had to
Hmm.
make sure that I had a proper segue to segue to segue. I was like, "Yo, dog, I heard you like segues."
Feel like we've promoted. I'm sorry, I was making really bad jokes. I feel like we've promoted Segway enough.
Mm. And on that note, we like to. Yeah, damn it, you beat me to it.
Hmm.
Sure. Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Lay it on me. Ah, yes.
Yeah.
It's the tax. Oh yeah. Well, it's also just paying homage, right? Like everybody
Yeah.
uses it because everybody uses it.
To put a slight little ear tag in that, I don't know that the Wilhelm scream would really land as a trope, being that a trope is more of like a device, like a mechanism or motif or theme sort of thing. I guess it's a motif in that sense that you do always hear it, but now I feel like it's become like a pop culture nod more than anything.
Oh man, you just want me to pick one of my favorite game dev tropes? That's rough. I see how you do it. I know,
Mm.
I know. Well, I can tell you my favorite of my personal ones. I want to save those for later. I want to save some of my personal ones for later. Can we talk about like some more universal, we all hate them ones? Because that way I'd be more comfortable. We can ease into it. You'll allow it this time? Okay. The good old fetchy fetch boy. That's right.
Mm.
Mine. I was gonna say the escort quest, but we can start with fetch quests. I feel like they're intertwined with each other.
Yep. Sorry.
I was gonna say, what about like Destiny? Right, that's an FPS RPG.
Halo did
You
have
know,
an escort quest. At one point,
like
you have to escort a Captain Keys, I think, and keep him safe.
Well, and I think between that, like the escort quests and the fetch quests both, like with the escort quests, you're basically you're padding time, right? I don't want to call it lazy development because sometimes you're not necessarily trying to be lazy, you're just trying to figure out how can I cram some more content in here for my players. So that's why I'm not going to bag on people for them too hard, but I will say that they are definitely like the ubiquitous, like, I need some more content here. What should we do? I know. Let's make the player go and kill 17 more harpies. But these ones maybe they're different colors, so you have to kill those specific harpies. We can't just have you killing any harpies because otherwise you could have collected these items earlier.
Mm.
And it's. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Right. Right.
Very, very tailored.
Mm-hmm. Now my favorite is a combination too. Is when you get done, you kill all the harpies in the harpy forest, and you find that one cage, and it's got that gosh damn exclamation point above it, and you know what it's gonna be. You're gonna talk to that sumbitch, and he's gonna be like, "Hey, could you follow me while I very slowly, excruciatingly slowly walk back to the camp where you got this quest from?" And more harpies are going to show up, out of nowhere. There's going to pop into existence, just right in there. And then he's gonna run, he's gonna walk slightly faster than your walk speed, but slightly slower than your run speed
Mm.
because he was made by a war criminal. That's why. Because it was designed. The whole thing is a CIA experiment. You heard it here first.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, it's mind games.
And do you think that's by design for that function that they make the run speed the in between so that it forces you to always be changing speed and keep it interesting? Is that mm,
I think it's actually a mistake. I think it's actually
mm,
just. I think it's literally an error on the part of the developer because what they're doing is so okay. In most, I'm not going to say all. AJ, feel free to shut me down on this, but I feel like in a lot of games they try to make your enemies faster than your basic speed, but not quite as fast as your run speed. So if you get in a situation, you can kind of create a little bit of distance between you. Otherwise, caster classes in a lot of games have a real hard time getting their minimum distance to not get massacred, right? And I think what they're
mm,
doing is they're using their default. So in game development, a lot of the time we call those pawns, right? Those everything in the world that can be controlled that exists is a pawn. But so the pawn speed for an NPC, if you don't have NPCs that aggro on the player, even if you do at certain points, they probably adhere to those same rules. So when you don't go in and say my escort, this pawn you're going to be escorting is going to be a different speed, a different value. What's happening is they're just going with the default, right? Which is doesn't run quite as fast as you, but certainly moves faster than you walk. And so it just turns into a bit of a. I think that's a lot of why it happens. I don't think it's a design decision.
got it.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
or if it benefits you as the player, right? So if you say go out and mine 8 of these nodes because I want these stupid crystals out of these nodes, at the very least, what you could do is at least give people, well, now you have a bunch of material from the nodes for yourself because it had nothing to do with your quest, right? It could be a bit of a tool as a like a tutorial tool, right? If you want to teach people about mining in your game, like there are ways where it's not a bad thing. It's just when your content becomes nothing but kill 12 harpies, bring me 8 boar livers. Don't get me started on boar livers. And go and click on 7 squirrels to heal them with the magical talisman I've given you. That's not a real in-game item that I'm going to take back when you get back from your quest. Like, everything becomes, you just go do this thing for me. Come back, I give you experience points. Maybe I give you item, but it's like, what are you building? What are you getting out of it as a player? And I think that's where I say it's lazy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, wait, wind it back. Yeah, wind it back farther than that, I was gonna say. I mean, if you really want to say like when it starts, I mean, man, Golden Axe, the classic
Oh
Sega game.
gosh,
My
yeah.
my no, my brother, they had a dwarf who was a little badass. They had a big, strong barbarian man in his loincloth, and they had a woman in practically a matching like Red Sonja quality loincloth. I mean, like she was wearing next. She was straight up in a bikini, like that was
Yeah.
combat bikini, which don't get me wrong, I would engage in warfare in a combat bikini, but that's
Hmm.
an unrelated topic. Well, no, for me it's about psychological warfare. I lost 150 pounds or whatever, and let me tell you, things are a little lopsided still, even with the working out. So shock and awe campaign. That was Zardoz. Yeah, I did. Boy, I whipped that out.
Yeah. It's like I don't know what y'all talking.
Right.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, it never stops.
That drives me up the wall. And that not even just in fighters, I mean every genre. Like, knock on the door of any Korean MMO and you're gonna find a woman doing gymnastics wearing high heels. Like they might have leveled out the armor size, but like they're still wearing high heels on the body. So anyway. Oh yeah.
Bayonetta. She got
You know,
some massive high heels.
damn, you got me, because I was gonna, as one of my positive points, I was gonna talk about Diablo 3, how the Crusader is wearing the big old armor, like it's up over her jawline practically. The collar of that armor is huge. But then I thought about it from, I'm like, son of a biscuit, she is wearing high heels, isn't she?
That'd be an interesting challenge to see if you can actually find a female video game character that's not wearing high heels.
Oh, I got it covered. I can lay one on you right now, but
Okay.
World of Warcraft, funny enough, since its inception, um, weirdly, the female version of plate armor in World of Warcraft has bare midriff, like they're showing off the belly, but they wear everything else is identical to the male model. They shrink the shoulders down some to give it a more effeminate appearance, I guess, or whatever. Personally, I would just rather my character be able to see over his left and right shoulder because that feels like a tactical disadvantage. But hey, who am I, right? Who am I? I don't know how they fight in that world. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, yeah, no, they're absolutely. Well, they have a squire that helps carry the shoulders. You just can't see them because they're hidden under the cape. But no, it just these carry like a banner. Uh, but no, it's very rare. It's very rare. I'll say Capcom with the Resident Evil series has done very good with that. But those are just people wearing clothes, right?
Hmm.
That's just women who happen to be like dressed in their police uniforms and things, so they're just wearing boots, because I think it would just be too egregious at that point, even for a Japanese developer. Cough, cough. Not saying it's all their fault, but it's mostly their fault. Um,
So I googled Bayonetta just to see, like, because I'm not too familiar with. I know we brought it up in a
mm,
previous conversation. So and I know that she, from what I gathered from the last conversation, that girl gamers like her. Like she's actually a badass woman and can represent a strong female character. But having said that, looking at the cover of this game, it's pretty shocking that the main image for Bayonetta is her facing away from the camera. It's
mm-hmm.
it's her back to us. Can't see her face at all, and she's got to expose, like, her skin tight suit is exposed on the back, and it tapers down into a V right at the top of her butt crack.
Let me blow your mind real quick. That's actually not clothing. That's her hair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's a witch, and so she forms her costumes out of her hair. And when she uses super moves, her hair is not on her body anymore. It's doing other things. Um, and
Ah.
so they use very tasteful camera angles. But no, Bayonetta's character design, yeah, it was done by a woman. A lot of her dialogue was written by a woman. And that the main story was written by a Japanese developer, but secretly also his wife.
Hmm.
And she is a thoroughly adored badass character, because they're just like, man, she's sexy, she's smart, she just whoops the shit out of people. Um,
Interesting.
and yeah, she gets a very positive response.
Hmm.
Yeah, a bit of conditioning.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. You got to go out and get them yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
like it's part of their body structure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Well, and let me ask you a question on that real quick. Before I know you want to move on from this one, and we should. But do you think it comes from a lot of the oh woe is me, like the damsel in distress kind of like where like women are practically treated as like set dressing in your game? Do you think that a lot of it stems from that? Do you think those things are interconnected? Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Well, Khan, I think you had a point on this where you wanted to talk about kind of that whole damsel in distress kind of a situation. Like
Yeah.
do you want to
I
talk some
mean,
more about that real quick?
I guess yeah, to transition it a little bit. I mean, there's not too much to say. I think we're all so overly familiar with the damsel in distress thing, and it just falls into the same objectification and like romanticization of what men offer in the world. Like the man savior complex, I think, is the equal and opposite thing of the damsel in distress.
Sure.
Um, and one thing in all this conversation is like part of games is that it's meant to be this amplified version of everything.
Hmm.
That's kind of the point. So this the way games have led some things to be synonymous, like damsel in distress or sexy badass woman, is that what, because it's so prevalent, is it also a reflection on this is just how we as a culture perceive games and perceive a hyper realized, hyper fantasized version of reality or non-reality, whatever it is this just how we want things? Do we want, and if women respond well to some tropes and even some cliches and stuff, does that mean this is it? Is this what we see in this world? And or do we just go along with it because we've already defined it this way? Is that why sexualization of women is so ubiquitous? Because we have made it so.
Right. Has it just become the de facto? Like, is it just the perception of it? Yeah, yeah. I know. I get what you mean. That's
Yeah,
an
not
it's,
saying
it's
that's
an interesting
right.
point.
Not saying that it's right, but it is nevertheless an acknowledgement of the phenomena.
Right. 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 Well, and that's also, I think that also, like when we're talking about how it plays into storytelling, um, I know that you also have some words to throw out there about how they're
Mm.
used as plot devices anyway, right? Like
Mm.
that's another thing that's kind of ridiculous and I think plays into it where it's like, well, if your wife isn't pretty and she gets killed in the video game, is the player going to emotionally respond the same way as if, she's this beautiful woman who you spend your life with and you laugh and you sit on your dockside bench and she brings you a puppy for your birthday and you go out and murder thousands of people in response. It's like,
Mm.
well, can you talk like what do you think that trope comes back to? I mean, like, do you have a snappy name for that? Like, is it a
Um, that's hard. There's one called like ice boxing where they'll like kill the woman character as the revenge factor. And one thing I love about Deadpool is they're very self-aware. They acknowledge their own tropes and stuff. And in Deadpool 2, the opening credits is that like they see, if you haven't seen it yet, then you need to go watch it. But the opening scene is the wife dies
Mhm.
and he can't save her. And so then it goes into credits. And the credits, as you know in Deadpool, if you've seen it, the credits are all like very meta. They're like, oh, some douchebags. This movie was written by some douchebags. That's what it'll say. And one
Yeah,
of the things was it says like produced by, and then the next line is, did they seriously just icebox this woman? Like, did they really just play this trope of killing the woman, so the guy has a revenge plot.
Nice.
And that's kind of like, it's an evolved version of the damsel in distress in a way, or a mutated version of it. It's still
Sure.
using the loss of a woman or the desperation of a woman as the man's single driving factor.
Mm. Love that movie, by the way, for the record. But what are you doing here? Hey, stop churning butter for a minute and maybe like my my brother. I see her right there in the forest. Like I can see on my map where she is. It's you just gotta.
Yeah,
It's across the street, my guy. Like
put the butter down.
yeah.
Mm. Mm.
As far as being you're referring to my least favorite character in anime, movies, video games, etc. You're talking about Jesus Kun. Oh yes, that's Kun for the audience. Yeah, Jesus Kun's it's a funny title is given to it by the anime community. When you have these characters that are just invincible. They are just
Mm.
the thing that everything revolves around. They are the sun to this world's universe. Without them, everybody's screwed. Nobody can do their dishes. Dogs are friends with cats. Absolute madness. It's such a bizarre one because it's like you cheapen your world and you cheapen your player experience. You cheapen the audience's like involvement with your story. It's like because you know that Jesus Kun is always going to be okay. He's always going to be the one who fixes the problem. He's always going to be the one who rolls in at the last second when insert name here is in trouble or whatever is in trouble. It doesn't matter. Like it can be like, man, I just can't get rid of all these damn rats in my house. The Jesus Kun, holy shit, you just broke through my wall.
Jesus is another player, right? That
Yeah,
your character is okay.
yeah. You in most games. Yeah, you are just smashing through walls, and you're just the only one that can get it done. And it is strange, It never really occurred to me until AJ when you were talking about it, the idea that these NPCs are completely powerless.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, it's like what were you guys doing before I got here? Was there another me before me that did everything for you people? Because like, geez, I know what do you mean you people? Well, I mean NPCs in this case, but right, yeah, it's
Mm.
totally static. Yeah. I think that's pretty
Mm.
universal. It's like killing Nazis in video games. Everybody's okay with that. I think it's the same thing where it's like, you killed that guy's dog. There's very few people on this planet who are not going to be immediately pissed, and those people should be cast into the sea. I'm just putting that
Mm.
out there. This,
Oh.
yeah, good. Well, no, you know what happened is those were the people who picked him up to cast him into the sea where he belongs. They just disconnected first. That was. Look, I'm not saying if you abuse animals, you're going to absolutely be cast in the sea, because there's a queue ahead of you, and we will find you. That's anyway.
But that's a great trope in general, like the whole idea of harming an innocent or like a universal innocent symbol. You just put that in there and then take it away and see if people don't feel something, which can be
Oh yeah.
good and can be bad. Like John Wick, I don't think John Wick was trying to shy away from tropes and even some cliches. I think they were like, "Yep, we're gonna give you this popcorn ride, and you're gonna love it because it's just damn well done, and we're invoking all the tropes and cliches, but it's so much fun." And they prove that you can do that. It's all about taste, you know.
Yeah, they just wanted to get it going, right? They were like, we need Shoot Man to shoot some people. And
Yeah,
what's the quickest, what's the shortest path to really get him there? And I think they found it.
dead puppy. I mean, I can't speak for Hollywood, but I will definitely tell you that babies and kids, like that's something I've heard a lot actually is a like an on-set thing. I've heard producers say that, like, one of the best things you can do is get babies and kids in your film because one, logistically speaking, it's difficult. Legally speaking, it's actually very, very controlled and very difficult to have children and pets on set. So the fact that you can get it is big, and the fact that people respond to it so well is it's well understood the sort of economic and emotional leverage you get with that. So yeah, people definitely do that.
I mean, I think it works too. It's definitely got to be effective. Because I mean, I can tell you one thing: if somebody comes into my house to, replace a broken pipe, and they stop and pet my dogs first, like, I'm not going to make sure that I didn't leave my wallet on the table. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where if you walk by my dogs, and my dogs are adorable, by the way. If you can walk by my dogs without asking me if you can pet them, or petting them without my permission, I don't care, do it. Um, if you do that, I'm gonna wonder about you on some level.
Mm, yeah, it's ingrained. I think a lot of it is culture as well. Like what I don't think in other parts of the world that dogs are seen the same way.
Oh,
Like
sure. I mean,
in
food in
Pakistan
some
and
places.
yeah, like Muslim countries typically don't have much of a domesticated pet as a part of their culture. At least in Pakistan, I know being Pakistani that was the thing. Like, and there's like shows about Americans and Westerners having to take their dog for a walk and how laughable that could be because they're just kind of wild animals and you don't have them there. So the mileage you get on that sort of emotional trope can be limited to certain areas. Um, and not to crack open a much larger topic, but when you think of movies like Avatar, basically anything James Cameron has done, which are arguably the most universal films, we see a lot of the Western commentary and the criticism of the film is that it's cliche, that it's too accessible. Like Avatar One was hailed as like a CGI Pocahontas, and like, sure, yes, there's the colon.
I prefer Dances with Smurfs myself, but
There we go, yeah, and so it's there. There's always a familiarity, but that's part of the universality of it. Because when you start to make things, if you're a movie that's really going to hit with Westerners. It's going to eliminate some people because of the cultural relevance of it. So, yeah.
It's hard to think about things on a global scale like that. Like as Westerners ourselves, like it's very hard for us to even like comprehend sometimes I think some of those differences. Like I know that when people first get into Japanese cinema, a lot of the time they have a lot of feelings about it, and I'll explain some of the culture beats as best I can. I mean, I don't claim to be the an encyclopedic source of Japanese cultural knowledge, but it is one of those things where I find that I have to explain to people like, oh well, here's how it's different. So yeah, no, I get what you mean for sure. You know what's interesting too, and I don't want to I'm gonna let you finish, Taylor. Just give me 1 second. But the no Kanye jokes anyway. But the I got jokes. I got jokes. Thank you. I appreciate you guys stepping back to recognize my funny joke. But I think the other outcome too, when you have something like that, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. And I think that's kind of what Khan's touching on here is like if you take that trope and it works and it's effective and it's just been repeated over and over again, it might start to feel a little tripe, right? Like you might start to get to the point where you're just like, why are we doing this again? But it's like, well, people like it. It's like how Batman in all but one movie you have his background story again. Like almost the Batman backstory is a trope full of tropes that has now itself become a trope, right? This guy who's like, I'm an orphan now, I'm mad at things or whatever. I'm punch things. I'm Punch Man. It's like, okay, we get that, and like maybe every time I see it, as you said earlier, AJ, I roll my eyes so hard in the back of my head that it propels me backwards. I hit 88 miles an hour and travel in the past, and then have to find my way back to the future. Is because it's like, oh my god, really? But at the same time, my brain just kind of glosses over it at a point where it's just like, okay, geez, we're doing this again, okay. But then as soon as it's over, I'm like, all right, I'm invested. I get the backstory. It's an easy to swallow pill, right? Yeah, or not at all. What the hell's going on? I can't see anything. That's a whole other. That's a whole other podcast. We'll get it. I promise we will have the directorial and lighting podcast in the future. Lighting. I'm a big lighting nerd.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. They layer it. Just unbelievable. Yeah.
Was it cheesy then though? Was it cheesy and tropey then? Or was it fresh?
Oh man, that's hard. That's hard because honestly, movie making in the last 20 years even has come so far, actually. Like even if we can identify components of where those things came from, like we know like the epistemology practically of a trope. Like we kind of get that. But it's like, oh man. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Back then, was it like real novel? Yeah, I don't know.
Brilliant. Yeah. Hmm.
Man,
I would say
we should
as
pin that for a whole didn't age well podcast.
oh yeah,
Let's do that next podcast. Let's just jump straight to it. I want to do that next week or next week.
and the Lord of the Rings one too. That could be its whole own thing.
Didn't age well. I've got some words about didn't age well. So anyway, yes.
Hmm.
Little glowing spot. I don't know. I mean, I was playing a game last night that I'd never even played before that featured highlights on enemies that were the literally this is how you beat this boss direction. It was a multiplayer extraction. I guess we're calling them extraction shooters now. Your Tarkov-like games. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, it was an extraction shooter made and it released just in September. And boy howdy, we got to the last boss of this extraction thing, and he was a big giant scary well, I don't know his gender to be fair. It was not obvious. But it was a big giant thing, like this big huge four-armed thing. It was scary and it came out of the ground and we're like, "Oh damn, what do we do?" And I love that moment of "Oh damn, what do I do?" And I think that in for me anyway, I know I'm a specific type of gamer, but for me, like I want that bit of anxiety where I'm like, now I've got to figure this fight out. And they
Hmm.
really came into my house and just slapped me in the face with it. They're like, no, no, no.
Hmm.
You specifically, the glowing bubble. And then there's going to be
Hmm.
3 of them, and then he's going to be vulnerable more, and you're going to shoot him a bunch more, and then he's going to bury himself and come back out. Oh, look, he has more bubbles on him.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a game that released in September, like.
Hmm.
Yeah, little immersion breaking, little patronizing.
Yeah. I was gonna say it kind of depends on who your target audience is, because some people might not want to do the mental thinking of identifying the problem. They want to be told what to do and then feel rewarded for having done it.
Sure.
But
There
then,
oh, yeah. I mean, there are people who the anxiety that I described that I want, they hate that.
mm,
They don't want that. If you give them that kind of anxiety, they're gonna be like, "I'm done. I don't want to even try. Like, nope, too hard." And that's fine. That's fine. I understand it. Like, not every game has to be for everyone. And I understand from a business standpoint, if you can make your game for everyone, you make more money. I get it. But
mm. I also think if you make this game satisfy people who are really want something and then they really get it, I feel like if you're in story, at least in film, if you get deep enough into, I believe, yourself and you understand the depth and the root of your own humanity and your own feelings, you end up accessing kind of everyone, because you realize everyone has human is a human at the end of the day. So if you can get to the true root core of it, then you do get everyone without being patronizing. But I'm
sure.
sure in a game, obviously, there's so many other layers to it.
I feel like for games you do have to be sensitive to your audience because you have your for people like me you have your Dark Souls, you have your Sekiros, you have your games that they just do not give you any of that, and it's
Mm,
all up to you with your own creativity and ingenuity. So yeah, I mean then you have other games too like The Witcher when played in again in my opinion I'm not telling anybody how to play it but The Witcher 3 on its hardest difficulty settings, if you don't research that creature and you don't go out and make the right potions and you don't go out and set up your fight right, man, you're screwed.
mm,
You're not going to make it.
I like that. Mm.
Right. Yeah. Mm.
Mm. Mm. Mm. Mm. Yeah, you gotta run around. Mm. Mm.
Yeah, hit it till it die doesn't really carry over as well.
Yeah, because they're just stronger for no reason.
Bullet sponges, yeah.
I hated that. It's like we up the difficulty and everyone just take more damage. I'm like, well, no, make them more difficult, not just
Yeah.
stronger.
Yeah, it shoots the bullets
Oh
harder
wow.
because it's a higher level gun. That's how it works in real life.
Uh,
Yeah, me too. Let me know. Like
I think
I'm
what
interested. I'm interested.
on the term of like the patronizing mechanic, one thing that now thinking about it, one thing that I would really like is to be rewarded for having been clever and figuring out what the attack should be. Even if the attack, even if it was like a one shot kill and it was very easy, I am almost more rewarded because I was clever enough to find something that was so easy and effective.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit it. I think you hit the nail on the head with rewarding, right? Because you have a sense of accomplishment. Then you feel like you've
Mm,
earned something. And
mm,
don't get me wrong. A lot of gaming these days is I win. My brain get the happy chemical. I want to do more of this to get more of the happy chemical. But for
mm,
some of us, it's a little bit more. And I don't mean to make this sound like a pride point. It's not. Play your video games however you want. It doesn't matter to me. But for me personally, yeah, the sense of having achieved something where it's like, oh, I did a smart and now it works super well. That feels better to me than the I win button. I don't mean that insofar as discovering something that gives me an I win button. That's also different. I'm talking about like the literally hit it till it dies. Like, what do we need to do here? Well, are we geared up enough for this? Yeah, I'm item level 500 across the board. Well, let's stand in front of this monster and then hit it till it dies. It's like, well,
one of
that
my
doesn't really feel too good.
favorite things about the quick point is it comes from Craig Mazin, who actually is the co-creator of Last of Us for the TV show.
Yes.
He wrote it for TV. Brilliant guy. He has a podcast and they talk a lot about screenwriting. And one of the things he said that I love was don't give your audience two, give them 1+1, and then let them feel rewarded for having figured it out.
Mm,
It's even as simple as that. I think the way that manifests in a theatrical experience is when somebody, everyone's had this moment where the person next to them turns and starts tapping you, like, "Did you see that? Did you see that? Did you figure it out?" And it's because they've just done it. They've just got the dopamine hit for having figured it out themselves, and they're
yeah.
excited about it. So I think your movie's doing really well if you have people kind of doing that.
Well,
And
yeah.
they're
Well, I
like,
mean, because if you got a giant, a boar monster, right? I love boars. Apparently, just that's been
mhm,
my new screen name. The boar, but a BORE, mind you. But the so if you have this big creature that runs real fast and it charges, and you and your friends are at low level, you're beating this thing with swords. It sucks. You're like, man, those things always kick our ass. All of a sudden, one of your friends is like, you know what? I'm gonna bring a spear this time, and he levels that spear at that charging boar, and it one hits it. Everybody's gonna be like, son of a bee, are you kidding me? Like, we could have been doing that all along. And that
mm,
guy's gonna feel like the friggin' hero, which he literally is.
yeah,
And see, I don't know. It's nice. You celebrate your victories, you celebrate your friends' victories, like in life and in media and in games and everything else. But yeah, it just makes you feel like the smartest guy in the room for a second. So it's just yeah.
yeah, mm, yeah.
That's the wild. Yep.
Mm, mm. It, I think they're both, and some people have playing styles where, like, I am typically a sniper in a game or a long shot. I really like the idea of getting that one perfect shot that they never saw coming. That to me is super satisfying. Is in like I feel accomplished in two different ways: good shot and undetectable. And then other people like the boldness of having been able to get so close to you that you didn't detect them, which I guess similar thing. But yeah, some people like sneaky, some people like invisible. Try to roll up, and if they feel like they're about to turn around, and blast them away. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes, that's it.
Oh yeah, this is why Call of Duty has all of their executions that they charge money for now. I mean, like,
Oh.
there's literally an economy around the way that you get somebody if you backstab them. Like,
Mm,
yeah, clearly people like it. But anyway, yeah, and I do have one that I kind of wanted to lead in with because we were talking earlier about your super powered character, your hyper elite protagonist. I think that feeds really well into the whole Mary Sue trope. um, you have this character who is perceivably totally normal 1 second, and the next second they're, gunning. Well, and I'm not using John Wick in this example because he has a very good reason to be able to gun down 1,000 people. Um, not entirely exclusive to the choreography completely changing in the second movie, and it all being about a guy runs around a corner, gets shot in the head, and then John Wick shoots another guy, and then rolls with him on the ground for a second to grab his gun to shoot another guy, and then three more guys run around the corner. Um, but I mean, in your movies like The Force Awakens is one that people like to use a lot. I write that one off personally because she was always a space wizard. But the fact that she's suddenly so in control of her space wizard powers, okay, like 1 second you're running around the sand place getting your bread rations, which by the way, I love that setting. God, I wish they would have leaned into that more.
Mm.
That I love things that are like desolate. I like people scraping by. Like I always like that setting a lot. But yeah, next thing you know, she's going toe to toe with Kylo Ren, who inexplicably forgot all of his training. Like yeah, that's you're elevating this character and you're pumping up this character and pumping him up and pumping him up in your story, and it's like yeah, but why though? Like what did they do to get that way? And it's like there's a lot of examples of this. They seem to like really skip over how the character got powerful. Spider-Man's guilty of this. That's one of my favorite examples of a what do we call it? A Larry,
A
not a
Gary
Mary Stu,
Stew.
a,
Gary
a,
Stew.
a Gary Stew. That's right, a Gary Stew, where it's like I got bit by a radioactive spider. Well, now I understand how to run up walls. It's like my brother, like, but how though? Like, what made you even think to do that? Like, that's one of the things that I do award anime a lot of the time. It'll be a stress situation. It'll be a reaction. X-Men does this also if you're not of the animu variety. Where it's like a stress situation is what brings that
Well,
power out.
so
At least you've got something.
one thing I did like about Spider-Man was in the crawling the wall thing, is there was a moment when he woke up and his vision was clear and all that stuff, and stuff kept sticking to his hand. And then
Yes.
he was like, "Oh, wait, something's going on." And then later he's like, "Could I?" And he kind of touches the wall and he's like, "Is could this happen?" And so
Yes.
in that sense, I think there was a little bit of a transition that got there, and I actually liked that movie for, yes, he was Gary Stewed with the power, but it was still Peter Parker kind of earning the extent to which he could use it.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of the new ones. I'm thinking of Tobey Maguire, and the comic
I don't know
books.
what I'm thinking of with the stickiness, but regardless.
Was it Tobey Maguire? Did he really? Okay,
Mhm.
I must not remember that movie very clearly, but
Mm, mm,
I feel like
mm.
that plays into a power fantasy more than anything else. Like I think it's just delivering a power fantasy like on a plate. I don't know if that's if I would call him a Mary Sue as so much as just a power fantasy trope.
I think what's cool about that, because all these things, not to be devil's advocate, but
No, do it.
there's so
Advocate.
what I liked about Captain America was he did get Gary Street with powers as well, but he was somebody who already had that on the inside, and he just didn't have the gift on the outside. So the hero was already within him, and he was selected. So he wasn't as Gary Stewed as Peter Parker was, because Peter Parker was purely lucky. But for Captain America, he was selected for his traits. He was identified to already have heroic traits, and then they were gifting him with the ability to actually enact them all and be the
Yeah.
savior in that sense. And that I thought was a decent way of pulling that off of somebody having great gifts overnight, sort of thing.
Now that I think about it, most of the characters that I hear the term Mary Sue applied to, it's usually characters that are of course female and who just happen to be way strong and way good at everything. Maybe that's a better way to really like reel it back and define it. Um, a lot of people have indicated that a lot of video game protagonists, especially that are female, are Mary Sues. It's like, well, I don't know though. Like there could have been a lot of off-screen training. I mean, maybe that entire trope and the application of that term is just kind of bullshit. Because it's like I've heard it applied to
That's
Laura
that.
Croft, and it's like, well, Laura Croft like lost her parents and then went into like crazy person training mode, right?
Mm.
I know we're not supposed to use that term basically, but yeah, and like Batman's the same way. You have your Jill from Resident Evil. I've heard somebody call her that before, and it's like she's a special forces, like she's like a above SWAT team level law enforcement officer. Like I feel like she maybe would know how to shoot, but then they talk about things like, oh well, but then she's one hand holding off this thing and just climbs back up, and that's just like, nobody could do that. I'm like, well, yeah, but do you really want your character to feel weak? Like I feel like that kind of subtracts for some people. It's hard to pin down even like at this point. I feel like what Mary Sue even refers to, because I do hear it thrown all over the place.
So I did a Google. Apparently, Bella Swan from Twilight is a Mary Sue
Yeah, but she
because
got bitten by a magic vampire.
she lacks flaws. She's they're saying it's like a Mary Sue, someone who's overly
But
perfect,
yeah.
lacks any flaws, and is idealized without explanation. So apparently Bella is one. I'm not too familiar with Twilight, to be honest, but
I am deeply. Been married for a very long time. And the the yeah, I don't. I mean, again, that's more of a power fantasy type of a vehicle for me, because you're
mm,
taking this, she's the regular girl at high school, and the older boy sees how special she is, and then she turns actually special. Um, and she does have a flaw. That woman cannot breathe through her nose apparently, and I feel her pain. Um, oh, Kristen Stewart jokes. No, I'm kidding.
I
I'm
just
joking.
got it.
She strikes me as a phenomenal person. She strikes me, and she is a terrific actress. Like, even if she, in her younger years may have been a little written off, but I mean, like, people always forget this too about her. She was in Panic Room. Like, she was a daughter in
Oh,
Panic Room. She was a dramatic ass actress in that, and she was very convincing at a very young age. Just because she happened to grow up and get kind of like, pigeonholed into this like role of this like sultry teenager, that doesn't, that's not her entire list of qualifications, like it's anyway,
there's
but
no
I
Mary Sue.
digress.
Oh
Get
yeah,
Out,
yeah.
is it really?
I didn't come up with that.
Oh, okay. See, you could have just never said that. I would have thought you were a genius. Yeah, I
Oh
thought you were
no,
just
no, no,
brilliant. You should have
no,
taken
no,
the
no.
W. But
Sorry. No, I didn't mean to claim that one.
well, anyway, I don't want to get into that one too much, because again, I feel like the term Mary Sue is one that's used by the gamers TM, and I'm not gonna pick a fight with a bunch of incels over them making themselves feel better by applying a weird name to a thing that's clearly just a power fantasy vehicle. But apparently, women aren't allowed to have power fantasies, so we need a word for it. Um, so I'm just gonna go on the record as saying I think the Mary Sue trope is bullshit for the most part. Um, because I mean, how many male characters do we have? Like, you're right. Like, what do we need a word for that? It's just like, you're just my power fantasy vehicle. You're perfect in every way.
Mm.
Captain America, you're a little dweeb like I was when I was a kid, back when reading comic books was not cool. Hashtag stay out of my culture. No, I'm kidding. I'm not gatekeeping, but I'm not. I would never gatekeep nerd stuff. Like, be a nerd, please. I want more nerds. But when
I
you're a
think,
kid and you're reading these comics, you're like, oh, I'm this tiny kid. What can I possibly do? But it's like, but kid, if you got heart, you got hot, kid. You could save America. You can become
mm.
America's ass. It's like, all right, hey, fair enough. Uh, so yeah, I'm gonna write that off. I'm gonna just lasso that whole thing in and say these are just power fantasy vehicles. Does it make the character cheap? Absolutely. But you know what? Sometimes I just want, a Twinkie. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I just want some trash. Like,
Mm.
let's not get too deep into it. But
Easy. Yeah, it
the
doesn't
one
really
thing, I don't think it's important, right? Do you think? Do either of you feel like it's important?
what?
The Mary Sue thing? Like, should we even talk about that? I feel like I
Well,
can move on.
just saying it's worth acknowledging because this in some shade, right? It could be ultimately not true in every, maybe it is bullshit. But also as a power fantasy thing, it could totally be that vessel. I think some people do just want that. You do want
Sure.
this easy to understand way in which you can have some idealized power, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
No, absolutely. I mean, especially modernly, right? People feel very powerless,
yeah,
culturally, and I think that, sure, have your heroes. I don't care.
mm,
Fair. That's fair.
Hmm. George R. R. Martin is famous for having, Game of Thrones is very much so. It ends up being all the queens that are really the ones pulling the strings and the stuff. He was asked like, how can you write women characters so well? And he kind of looked at the interviewer dumbfounded as like the same way I write male characters. I write them as a person.
Yep.
And he just writes characters. And I think the only thing at that point that because then the counter argument might be like, oh well, then you're not giving enough unique identity to what men and women go through that's different for each other. But I think George still acknowledged it, where the things that the women have that the men don't, besides a higher level of intellect, seemingly, is the knowledge of what it's like to actually bear a child. Right, that I think is reserved for women and women characters. They may be able to um, say that they have a unique relationship with their child, and that no one can understand what it's like to actually birth one, or no man can understand that. Beyond that, I don't know really what the difference is, to be honest. And I think George has proven that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And it is an interesting point because as a writer myself and working in so much tabletop space, I always have flaws in all of my characters. Sometimes deep running flaws, because I think that helps you to identify with the characters and it makes them more human, right? But one of the things that I like to do too is I'll step things back even on a cultural level. In a lot of my games lately that I've been planning, I hope none of my players watch this because I didn't tell any of them that I do this because I was like I might give things away and I don't want them to get freebies. But
Mm,
they're going to interact with the culture very soon, where all of the men are illiterate
mm,
because it's a smaller kind of a tribalized area, and the men don't learn how to read. They're too busy going out hunting and gathering and fighting
mm,
wars with the neighboring tribes. The women are the ones that learn how to read, and they're actually the ones that impart the knowledge of the temple to the children. And I did steal this 100% because this is, if you go back far enough in time, pre, I think maybe even into the adoption of Judeo-Christianity in the original Jewish tribes and things, like women were the ones that taught the faith to their children because they knew it. They were literally able to read. So
mm,
I stole a lot of that because I was just like, yeah, I think I'm gonna lean into that a bit. But anyway, that's just messing with it on a cultural level. But no, my characters always, yeah, I try to give them silly things like they had a woman in the original game who she was an excellent gunsmith, and they knew she was the best gunsmith. But to get her on their side, this is of course a fall of humanity type of a situation. They had to bring her back soap operas because she loved her stories, and she was like obsessed with them, right? To the point where they thought it was actually weird at one point. They're like, why is she so into this? And then one of the players finally put it together. They're all in Spanish. Nobody else in this camp speaks Spanish.
mm,
She herself, she originally came up from Mexico, and she was stuck in this like northern area state when it all went down, and everybody else went to the Four Winds. So she literally had no one else to speak Spanish with. So then one of the players started learning Spanish to engage with her, and all of a sudden, bam, all of her services were available.
mm,
So it's like it's just you can write it, you can write in little things that seem like flaws that are actually just a hint. Anyway, I won't get too much into it, but I do agree. George Martin, for my beefs with him in that show and its weird acceptance in society, how huge it got.
mm,
You're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right about that. I always enjoyed the female characters in Game of Thrones quite a bit,
mm.
especially Brienne of Tarth. That's step on me, mommy. Anyway, but
Because they're all powerful just for being people. They're powerful in
yeah.
that way.
Oh, we can have a Game of Thrones discussion too because I have a lot to say, a lot of really great things to say about that show actually, and that series. No, good things, good things. I would never make anyone watch or rewatch that. Anyway,
So,
earlier I know that you talked about NPCs with obvious weak points. Not to segue out too quickly here, but um, the one thing that I always notice too is that your bosses and your NPCs and everything. I know we mentioned static worlds earlier. You ever think about what that boss is doing in that boss room before you show up? Like the idea of a boss room. Like,
mm,
why is that cat just sitting there? He just, and like in MMOs especially are guilty of this. It's like your boss is sitting like on his throne in this broken down castle, and you all walk up in his room, You're looking at him. He's across the room, but you're not in his aggro range, so he can't see. He's very nearsighted. And like, why though? Like, what is what? You just, my guy. No wonder you want to fight us. You have nothing else to do. You're just sitting in that chair. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 Interesting. It gave them an opportunity to improvise, and that's a great reward, I'm sure. Mm.
yeah, yeah. Hitman,
Mm.
Hitman, Hitman.
Mm.
It suddenly occurs to me. I wonder if quest hubs aren't just as much a part of the fetch quest being so prevalent, right? Because if you got a quest to bring somebody boar livers, but boars were interspersed throughout a forest, right? Well, now it's a quest that's going to take a while to complete. You're going to do other stuff while you're doing it. But when you have the idea of quest hubs and leveling zones, you've got this one village where you get all your quests from. So they have to populate the surrounding area with the things for that quest, right? Just so you can go do the thing, do the things maybe even, and then come back to the quest hub. So it's like, I wonder if like, that's also like because I'm trying to think of the design philosophy of a lot of MMOs, and I think that might be a big part of it too, of why it's all so immersion breaking and feels so transparent to me, that it's like, oh, this is a video game that I'm going to be playing, and this is going to be the gameplay loop, and I figure it out immediately. And why
Mm.
it's used so often is because it did so well for WoW, obviously, and EverQuest before it, but hmm,
Mm. Literally.
yeah, I get jokes, yeah.
Think for certain kinds of games, it seems to make sense. Like this really opens a whole other thing about like what do you pay for in games? Like are some people incentivized by and what seems worth it for them to get? Like I don't ever buy in-game cosmetics, but that's funding all these billion-dollar games, making them free. So there's a value system for some people to just have the ability to just get the next level as easy as possible. So for a fetch quest that sets you up to very clear, it's like the same thing as before. Like, do you want to have to figure it out, or do you want to just be told and then do the thing? You get the reward from doing the thing. And I think the fetch quest satisfies that doing the thing reward. You know what to do, you just do it, and then you get it. I think it's probably for me, a player like me, I would want both. I would want a fetch quest where I know I got to do it, but I'm rewarded even greater if I figure something else out, something that wasn't told to me. If I have an opportunity to, I guess that may be an example of emerging gameplay, or an emerging puzzle, whatever, emerging logic. If I can sift through some new logic that wasn't previously available to me, I identify it and solve it, and then I get a reward. That to me would be the best thing, best case scenario. Hmm. Hmm. Um, Going back, it slightly relates, but there's we were talking about NPCs and like the sort of what are they doing before you get there, and I don't know how like if I'm going to make a specific point here, but in film with actor study or character study with actors, it's a common exercise to consider the moment before. So when actors are breaking down scripts and they're trying to find out the motivation for the scene and also make it feel natural, you think about what happened just before the scene. What were they doing? What were they thinking? Where were they physically and emotionally right before the scene starts? And then they usually come prepared. I think that there's an expectation that you'll have a conversation with the director about that as an actor, and you'll understand what happened in between these scenes the moment before, and that is what makes it feel natural and real. That the exploits of this scene feel justified because there's a tone that happened off camera and before the scene even started, but it was somebody thought about it and it's there. I mean, NPCs could probably benefit from doing that too, but then I imagine that includes an exceptional level of coding where you have to account for the behavior of these characters when they're not being used. Mm. 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 Do you
You know, I
think?
didn't. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, just a question on the AI stuff. Like with this, with AI branching, and I forget what you call it, but when you like build the branches of conversation and the possibilities and all that, do you think with new tools that can maybe do those on the fly, like an AI-driven thing, that we will start to see this much more organic behavior of these NPCs? Like you might find them preparing for a mission or doing something natural, and maybe you could even sit there for an hour and watch them actually live their lives as soldiers in the barrack or whatever.
You just asked my questions. That's why I was like, go ahead. I
Oh,
felt
good.
like you were probably, yeah.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
Makes perfect sense at that point. Yeah, who'd have friends too. The I do wonder about as far as like how you script that kind of stuff. Um, so if you have your NPCs around your village, right? You were talking about their state or the state machine, like so basically what you could do, I guess at like a surface level to keep it alive or lively looking, your towns, but it would I feel like it would take a lot of work, would be to basically assign them all values, right? For like if they're hungry, if they're thirsty, if they need money even. You could have something silly like, do I need money? Yes. Okay, I'm a farmer, so I'm gonna go harvest my grain. He takes the grain, he goes to the guy, it just checks the I have money now box. And then you could say like, okay, am I hungry? Yes. He walks in the inn and gets food, right? Like, or walks into the restaurant. You know, like I understand that from a cursory level you can do things like that. But when it comes down to like, gearing up to go on an adventure, just like I want to watch this guy churn butter for an hour and a half because that's what he's gonna be doing for an hour and a half. I mean, I guess you could say like, is there butter? Yes, no. Like, do I have butter to sell? Yes, no, no. Okay, I gotta go milk the cow, then I gotta go do this stuff and run through this routine. But then you also run into the problem of like, well, what if your players wants to buy some shit from the guy? You know what I mean? Like, then your player's like, where is this asshole?
Hmm.
you know, I don't know. You can have other people run the shop. I guess you can like solve some of that stuff. But do you think it would just like kind of create a bunch of chaos where it's like now it is the living world, and well, hell, I want to get my armor smith to work on this thing, but he's got a queue of 90 other projects for the rest of the friggin' village. Now I've got to put my thing in queue. I think it'd be fun too, I guess. Hmm.
Hmm.
I feel like that's just the outcome of actual Skyrim if they put a multiplayer, but continue.
Hmm. 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 That's interesting. I think it's a fascinating idea. You just pointed out the habits versus needs, because in film it's kind of the opposite, and I see why though. In film, you want to track a character's needs because that's ultimately what you're there to do, is to satisfy their needs or not satisfy, if it's either a hero or tragedy or whatever it is. In a game, though, so the film does that because it's a linear path and you're A to B, and that's kind of you're in and you're out. In a game, you have to account for the behaviors procedurally, and that I totally get why habit is the thing, because you want to know what do they always do, like what's their cycle. Mm. Mm. Hmm. Interesting.
Oh, I'm still here. I just my camera's not working for some reason. I actually had to look. No, I'm still in. It's just my camera. Oh, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. I'll work through it. Oh yeah, yeah. WoW is probably the best example I can give for most things. Um, Insofar as there was this item in the lore, one character had it. He was a total badass. He had this sword called the Ashbringer. Like this thing is, we'll call it iconic enough that like Diablo has the Ashbringer in it. Like people recognize the design of this sword even, and it's like a legendary, crazy powerful, super wild. Oh, hey, I'm back. Super wild type of a thing that like the guy who carries it, his name because you see the weapon. And what they did is they introduced this I guess you can call it a story beat where you get a legendary weapon. And this legendary weapon is going to be your borrowed power for this campaign. You're going to dump resources into it, make it powerful, etc., etc. It was the Ashbringer. So I, as a paladin player, I walk into this group of people. They say, "Hey, hero man," which by the way is not my character fantasy. You're the hero of Hero Azeroth hero. Okay, great. And then I get the sword, and I have a moment where I'm like, "Holy crap, that's the Ashbringer. That's amazing." And then I'm oohed and awed for about, it lasted for about 8 seconds till I walk out of that, or I didn't even walk out. I'm sorry, I exit that cutscene, and there are Ashbringers everywhere. It's an Ashbringer picnic. Everybody brought one, and I'm like, oh right, it's an MMO, so everybody has it. And so it's like my one moment of feeling like I was actually special for a change, which again normally I resist, was instantly ruined by everybody being special. Because when everybody's special, nobody's special, right? In Harry Potter, you have your Muggles and your wizards, right? That makes at least some people special. This is the storytelling equivalent of it's the whole world. Everybody can use magic. In which case, I guess your special character would be the one guy who can't use magic or girl who can't use magic, which is also a thing in and of itself. But yeah, when everybody's special, nobody's special. If everybody's got the glowing broadsword, it's in the cash shop now for $2, and everybody buys it. Well, then now your purchase is worthless. Everything's worthless. Like it's like nothing matters because everybody's so damn special. Um, and I feel like that happens across the board, right? It leaks into storytelling too, where it's like if your story you're telling in a multiplayer environment is every player is recognized as the hero who is the savior, who is, the one guy who can go fetch enough flour for me to make bread from the store across the street on my quest, then nobody is special. Everybody is the bread making guy or the flour fetching guy.
The
Everybody is
chosen
the
one.
hero.
Like
Yeah,
imagine
everybody's the chosen one.
you walk up on a wizard telling somebody you overhear this guy getting a quest, and the wizard's like, "You are the chosen one," and sends him off, and then you're in it, and he tells you you are the chosen one. You're just like,
Yeah, it's like,
"Oh, I thought he
yeah,
was the chosen one, but I guess
you
I'm the
just
chosen one."
distributing chosen ones. Yeah, like
Yeah, doesn't
it
matter.
also, well, that goes against the idea of it too, right? The chosen
One.
one cannot be multiple people. Like otherwise, you have the chosen friends. With Superman and Batman and Aquaman. Like it really burns me every time it's used in gaming. And storytelling in general. Like I don't like the everybody's special. No, it's
Mm.
okay. Like I don't need. In fact, from a character standpoint, from a player standpoint, I don't even want that damn participation trophy, right? Like I don't want to be the general king god master guy. That's not my fantasy. I don't have power fantasies like that. I want to be, a scrappy. I guess I want to represent myself. I want to be a scrappy mercenary that just, drinks too much and sometimes is reliable enough to be in a party to take down a big monster with you. But for the most part, I want to go fishing in video games. You know what I mean? Like, I will tell you, Valheim. I hope you played Valheim. Um, yeah, you go out and you build bases, and you want to go do dungeons. You want to go. Oh, there's a wave of monsters coming to blow up our base. The only time that people would ever find me not fishing in that game was when I was cooking the fish. You know what I mean? Like that was my whole gameplay loop with Valheim, and I loved it. So yeah, again, like it takes away player agency. It takes away any impact that your story could have. And worst of all, it cheapens the experience because now you don't feel they tell you you're the chosen one, but you're not the chosen one. It's like, well, gee, this is just like being in private school again. Great. It's just, you know,
Mm.
I'm not that special. Yeah, it's like, oh, you told me I was super special, but you also told that kid, so now I'm not really special, am I? Like, anyway, that one drives me up the wall.
Oh
Oh, dude,
man.
people love fishing in games, dude.
50. Is that too much? Okay.
I would say 35 is typically what you want to shoot for with things like that because yeah, I think I don't know where I got this number from. It sticks in my head. I could be completely wrong, but I believe that the way that you generally gauge if a Quotey Finger feature has good engagement is if 35% of your player base is willing to engage with it.
Mm.
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 I think it breaks up the action, right? Like I think that's why I enjoy it so much in games. I mean, granted, in Valheim I went full send on it. That's not my normal way, but like uh, in World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14 and all of these games, I love just like sometimes I do a bunch of stuff and like everybody logs out and I'm just like the last one online or I'm the first one online. Sometimes I'm like I'm just gonna stand there and look out at some scenery and I'm just gonna fish. Like that's it.
Yeah, I feel like it gives players ability to cool down and take a break in the game, and you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be like, oh, because it can be kind of sad, like, oh, I gotta turn the game off, and sometimes you want a little bit more satisfaction, but you don't want to do the full shebang. So you just go off to the side and have a little chill moment and then wind down.
Yeah, it's nice too, because then you're like, you find a new area, you do all the quests, a bunch of quests in that area. You're kind of accustomed to it, but then there's always, for me anyway, there's that sneaking feeling of like, I wonder if there's any different fish in that area over there. Like it's weird. It's hard to explain, but
Oh
nice.
no.
I would appreciate if you're gonna add fishing anyway, have a monster, just one boss monster that can only be found by fishing him up. That would be hilarious. You pull the line
Mm,
and this thing just comes crawling out of the water at you. It's like, oh, sweet baby Jesus. Like, that would be a really
yeah.
funny gotcha. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like Sega Bass Fishing was an arcade game, for God's sake.
Yeah, that was huge. Yeah. For tropes, my favorite slash least favorite one, I guess my love to hate one, is the Deus Ex Machina trope. And the literal translation of Deus Ex Machina means God from machine. And what that means in a literary sense is there's a crafted savior, like a synthetic, forced savior moment where, or divine intervention, if you will. And the problem with divine intervention is it's completely out of your hands. So the audience feels it on a subconscious level that there's nothing we could have done to predict this or be rewarded for having witnessed it. It just happened. It was an act of God. And it takes the agency away from the main characters and the audience and all that stuff. Now, it is done all the time. And in some instances, I think it is unavoidable. And in some instances, you don't want to avoid it. Sometimes that is the point, is that you could not have done anything and now you're being saved and you now like the person who saved you. And so they're earning favor for you because of that saviorship. I mean, if it's done cleverly, then you get more out of it knowing that you maybe could have saved yourself, but ultimately if you really 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 wanted to be saved in the right way, then this you need this person. um an example would be, the very famous example is Luke at the end of A New Hope, or sorry, Yeah, New Hope when he's destroying the he's doing the famous trench run. He's doing the trench run. Is it that is New Hope, right? Am I tripping? Okay, great. I'm a Star Wars fan. I should know this, but he's in the trench run and he's going for the last missile. And Darth Vader's on him with his cronies, and one guy's down, another guy's down. Darth Vader's still up, about to launch the missile, but he can't because boom, Deus Ex Machina. Here comes Han Solo to save the day. Now, the what I like about it is it wasn't entirely divine. It was there was a combination of Obi-Wan contacting Luke with the Force, and there's like a reversal of his philosophy in that moment. The idea that he's not going to trust the technology as a pilot, he's going to trust the Force, which is a new thing for him. So that changed, and that belief was good, and it was rewarded by Han Solo having his own off-screen emotional change, where he's now heeding the call. Before he refused it and flew off, and now he's coming back. So, in terms of Deus Ex Machinas, that one was well done. Um, but nevertheless, he was saved randomly. And there's a million examples in so much pop culture where it doesn't work out that well.
I have a question for you. Have you ever seen World War Z?
Yes, it's been a while.
So that movie, right? It's all about Brad Pitt being at the right place at the right time and with the right exact circumstances to not die
Mm,
over and over and over again. And most of them
mm,
tend to be environmental. So when like let's say every scene he's got like, oh, this tower of this machine gun nest collapses and it takes down the fence that he was panicking about not being able to get over. When it's an environmental thing like that, that's still part of that trope, right? Like that's still luck shook out for it to be perfect for you to be saved.
yeah, yeah,
And
totally. I
I
think there's one shade of coincidence, and then there's the when it's unreasonable, then it's Deus Ex Machina.
okay. And in which case they should have just called it. Oh, go ahead, go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like that movie should have been called World War Deus Ex Machina then, because holy cow! Oh, that book is so good, and not at all that movie.
Mm, mm, yeah,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Mm, mm. If you have options, I don't know that it does. I think the Deus Ex Machina, it's you usually get that label when it feels contrived, when there's a clear conflict, and the only way that it's resolved is by something that you couldn't have predicted, and it's just out of nowhere. I think most people just will feel most audience members and gamers probably just feel like, oh, it's bad writing. They don't really know how to consciously verbalize why it was, but it's usually because of that, because it just feels contrived. Like you were never really. Hmm. But now it says, oh yeah. Hmm. 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 This is a false choice, really. Hmm.
Mind you, when he says across three games, I mean choice. He means that choices you made in the first game literally carried over with your save into the second game, and then even into the third game, where a lot of those story beats that you may have been enjoying, they just suddenly drop them. Like you may have a story arc that you've been interested in since the first game, and you're pursuing it in the third game. You're like, yeah, but nah, bro.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, it just dead ends here, huh? Okay, well, cool. But although I think that maybe wasn't so much a writing issue. Well, it was a writing issue, but I think it was brought about by developer interference or publisher interference.
AJ, check your goddamn sound on stream.
Well, that's interesting.
I like
Uh,
let
Oh
me pop
no.
in and check.
So
Muted.
I had a mic issue, so the first half was fine, but I had a mic issue about 10 minutes ago, so that was muted, but that's fine.
Oh, interesting.
Good morning, Puff.
That's funny. One thing that stood out from the comment about Mass Effect is it seems like it was such an obvious thing that it was a conversation point that everybody um instinctually and maybe involuntarily just they noticed it, they felt it, and it became a thing that everyone's like, well, how did this happen?
right.
Is that the
Yep.
deal?
Yeah,
Oh.
it really did turn into a bit of a controversy, to be perfectly honest.
Hmm.
And the fans of the game went out of their way to try to figure out like where are they going to go with this? Are they going to make this amazing? The indoctrination theory was a big thing that was floating around the internet for a while and would have genuinely provided better writing than what they gave us.
What is that, the indoctrination theory?
The indoctrination theory was that your character spent so much time fighting the Reapers that by the end of the third game, he had fallen sway to the Reaper's indoctrination, and at the end of it was literally in his own mind.
Oh, interesting.
And that they were going to there's a point at the end where you're kind of hit with a laser, but it transitions from you being like healthy and running to like kind of your armor's all fucked up and you're like limping along.
Hmm.
Um, and the point of it is after that happens, a lot of things are really weird in the game. Like you suddenly have a pistol that you didn't have.
Hmm.
Um, the enemies that you see that are normally have shields, like when they run up, they always have shields. They just don't have shields anymore,
Interesting.
right? And like even some things when you got onto the station, they have these like really kind of crappy meshes of dead bodies shoved into the corners, and the armor on those dead bodies is all that of your previous companions.
Interesting. So people painting the picture that this event was simulated by the enemy, and that sort of retcons all these oddities of the design.
Yeah. And it would have been like if they would have gone that direction with it, it would have been an outstanding ending.
Mm.
But what it was is weak. It was
So
very
nobody
weak.
really bought it. The indoctrination theory didn't actually hold up in the end for you, at least.
No, no, not at
Interesting.
all. Well, the
They're not
fans
that clever.
wanted, yeah, the fans wanted the indoctrination theory. The developers went and released additional, like I don't know, was it an additional cutscene?
Mm.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And it
Well, they
sucked.
literally redid the ending, right? Because it was originally it was which color explosion do you want?
Yeah. Uh,
What did it
literally.
change? So after the fans made a stink about it, they kind of caved and
They
gave
caved,
them
but they
that.
didn't cave because at the end of the day, it was still just change the color of the explosion. Minus, if you chose the right choice, you could see your character in the runes of everything, and he started breathing again.
Oh, sounds very arbitrary and vague.
Yeah,
That was the best description of the end of Mass Effect 3 that anybody could possibly give, having
Yep.
not even seen it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was
Interesting.
actually surprisingly succinct. Yeah.
So talking about the Deus Ex
Hmm.
trope, there's an opposite version of it,
Hmm.
right?
Oh, the
And
aliens. Go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead.
The alien space bat. So this one, you actually were the first person to say this to me. Was alien space bats. So I had to ask kind of what it was about. If you want to intro it, go ahead.
Yeah. So as we're looking up and doing our research on these tropes, because of course, when you're exposed to something through pop culture, sometimes you can pull the wrong context clues, right?
Hmm.
And as we're looking up the Deus Ex Machina trope, it said see also alien space bats. And of course, if I see a link on the internet that says alien space bats, I have to click on it. Okay? I feel like that's a pretty natural thing to do. So I clicked on it. And where Deus Ex Machina is an arbitrary event that just happens to save the player or the character or the, protagonist in the show, Alien Space Bats is a weird, arbitrary, typically unexplained event that causes the conflict. And this
Hmm.
is used often in kind of historical, alternate timeline shows. Good example would be Man in the High Castle, where like somehow the Nazis got or the Axis powers got the bomb first and won the war,
Hmm.
right? Classic one, if we're sticking with the Star Wars references, is somehow Palpatine came back,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And this
It's
does
like
show up in games. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, just like just piggybacking. It's this inexplicable intervention that doesn't even use anything else from the story. It's just its whole own new thing. It like breaks its own rules, which is
Yeah.
a really bad. Like it's a common thing where it's another one of those things where audiences feel it and they don't really know what they're feeling, but they just understand like the rules have been broken and I don't know what ground am I even standing on. All of a sudden we've narratively become untethered, and I'm just along for some ride that could go anywhere. So
Mhm.
what expectations are being managed? What's my reward?
And MMOs are the worst at this. Because, Chris, you brought up the quest hubs, right? And the problem is when you finish a quest hub, it most of the time they won't have a good way to segue you from quest hub to quest hub, right? Especially not one way that will prevent you from either going back and forth or giving you a lot of like are causing a lot of like writing issues, right? Because they want to write for one area and then they want to write for another area as the development progresses. They don't want to like write for this area and reference this stuff back and cross-reference and what happens if you've done XYZ. So they'll do something where you finish up, your quest in the village and the village is happy and the locals are dancing. You found their daughters, you've killed the boars, you've delivered tons of plates of liver pate. Um,
For the
and then
market.
yeah. And then, oh no, there's a skeleton army going after Lordaeron. We must go defend it. Okay, you think you'd hear about the skeleton army before. It's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, somebody in passing may have mentioned that, you would think.
Yeah. And, yeah, you can allude to it, you can foreshadow, but it really is one of those things where it doesn't, it's used to hide poor writing. I think this one, I've never seen an example of this where it's super abrupt, because that's kind of one of the main traits of this trope is it has to be abrupt. If you're using foreshadowing and you're building up to the conflict, it's not your alien space bats. But if, they killed the big bad planet Death Star stand-in the second movie of your trilogy, and they need to create a new conflict, well, I guess Palpatine comes back, right?
He's just
Or,
there.
or better yet, you're about to lose the fight. Everything's at its peak, and all of a sudden the enemies disappear, and you're like, what? Why? It's like, oh, because the alien space bats went back in time and killed him off screen, so now you're saved. Yay, alien space bats.
Oh man.
Well, that's more the Deus Ex.
No, it's both. I'm combining them. That's the
Oh,
you need another alien
damn.
space bat.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting better.
Okay.
And it kind of feels like the whole the dream thing, like it was all a dream, which is just such a terrible trope.
Oh man.
But because then it just undoes everything. It just throws your investment away. All of your time and emotion is gone. And that's what I think that's the issue with these alien space bats and Deus Ex Machina. They do the same thing. They sort of retroactively subvert all of the rules. Anything you were grounded to is just thrown up in the air now. And right when you reach, it's usually at the end. You're like, oh, of all the times, why are you gonna get to the end and then throw everything into question, and then land on something that nobody could have seen coming? And it's not. So a hero is actually somebody that ends up in a situation that you, as a viewer, cannot fathom how they're going to get out of it. And they do something unexpected. They do land somewhere that you could not have imagined, but it has to be based on the available rules. And what you see them do is they succeed in processing that information faster than you could have. That's what makes them the hero. That's what makes you respect them and them compelling. If the success comes out of something that you could not have possibly processed, and even your character could not have possibly processed, just happens to them, that's alien space bats.
Yeah.
Or Deus.
Well, and I love that you brought up the dream sequence, because one of my pet peeves, and I've seen this in television shows, all around the place, is where you have artificial drama being presented for something that the character already survives, right? Now, drama, according to them dying, usually, someone's holding a gun to my head. Oh my gosh, it's so scary. Now, drama's not trauma, because trauma can inform the future. It can explain something. But it's like having you're midway through season 1 of MacGyver or Sharp or any of these other protagonist named TV shows, and they're saying, "Ooh, the protagonist is going to die," and you're like, "No, he's not. No, the damn show's named after him. Like, come on."
Yeah. Exactly.
It just
the old plot armor.
Right.
Plot armor, yeah. It's like it makes the flashback completely ineffective, which I think is what we've called this trope, the ineffective flashback, for that very reason. Like, you can't build stakes in the past because the ultimate stake is threat of life. So you shouldn't really do that. You shouldn't make that the stake of like, oh, they're gonna die because they're not going to die. You've just seen them a second ago. You know you're gonna see them again. Don't do that. It happens so often though, and I think people are like filmmakers, storytellers, and audiences are all becoming more savvy to it. So you are seeing some eventual creative leaps that people are taking. They're actually getting creative with the usage of that. For
Mhm.
example, I'm not seeing this yet, but giving it away, this would be a great thing. Is if you do start your movie with, let's say it's James Bond, right? For example, you know this movie's about Bond. He's not going to die, right? But let's say in the first act, he takes a bullet to the head and he's dead. That would fuck people up because we in the zeitgeist know that of this trope in our subconscious that that person can't die, and to subvert that trope would really set people up to be like, holy shit, I don't know what this thing is about. Now I'm actually really in. How now are we going to see a story about someone who's dead? And if it's not super, you know what I mean? It opens up possibilities for what could happen.
I
And now you have the audience in your control in a way. You can do a lot with that.
I feel like that has been done ad nauseum with the Mission Impossible films. You
That's well, he
you
doesn't
s-
die though.
but you see a character who is visibly the dude, right?
Mm.
And they get shot. And like the first one with Tom Cruise where he sees the blood and you know the guy's dead. And you're like, "Oh, okay, of course he's dead." And then they did something similar to that in the movie after, and it got kind of to the point of like, all right, the dude tearing the face off is now the like,
Mm.
okay, we've seen this like 40 times. Got it. You guys are
Yeah.
just trying to write yourself out of the corner after you subverted the trope for the fifth time. Like, all right, enough. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
But that,
And
to
have
be
this
fair, that is the only one I've seen.
Is that but isn't that more of like the I was wearing a bulletproof vest all along trope? Like isn't that like the bad guy coming back to life, or is that Tom Cruise dying in the first act? 'Cause
depends
I
which
think what
one.
what Khan's talking about is like if you have Mission Impossible, well then whatever his name is in the movie,
Ethan Hunt.
Steve Impossible,
Mm.
Daryl Mission Daryl Impossible as they call him
Mm-hmm.
in high school. Does he get shot in the first scene? Then you go, wait, whoa, what? This movie's called Mission Impossible. It's about this guy whose name, for my purposes, is Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, wait a minute, how the hell? What happens now? I think that's what Khan's talking about, not the bad guy getting back up and showing
Okay.
up later in the fight or in the movie, because that's
Yeah.
that's the I was wearing a bulletproof vest all along trope. I don't know if it's called that. I have never looked into this, but I assume it is
I bet.
because
That's definitely a
you know
trope.
what I mean. It's like the guy, oh, this is the flask my wife gave me. He gets shot in the chest. He's like, oh, lucky the flask stopped it, or my book, or my
Right.
chinchilla statue that I just happened to carry on my chest. My Run DM my Flava Flav clock that I wear under my shirt all the
Yeah.
time. You just never saw it before.
You know,
Or it's like, oh, she's dead, and they run over. Oh, Mary, are you okay? And she's like, it's okay. And they always dramatically take off their shirt to demonstrate the bulletproof vest. It's like,
The
oh,
yeah.
just shoot me. You know what? Shoot me next time, so I don't have to sit through that trope again.
That definitely
to be
happens a lot.
to be fair, the OG with that was J.R.R. Tolkien.
It's true, yeah.
The
Oh yeah.
mithril
Oh, there's a
chain.
hobbit that meets the eye.
The mithril chain. There you go.
But I will say the good thing about the Mithro chainmail is he forgot that he had it, sort of thing. He didn't really know. Like I forgot that too. You know, like I didn't realize that
Hmm.
the Mithra was gonna save him. Like we didn't know the rules of Mithra at that point. We just knew it was like some super durable armor. And when he gets stabbed, you're like, oh shit, he's
Dwarf
stabbed. And they're like,
space
oh wait,
metal.
yeah. And then like, oh, that's right. He does have the dwarf space metal chainmail, and that's what it does. It saves him from those sort of things. That I'll buy more than, oh,
Yep.
that's right. He had a fucking bulletproof armor this whole time. We knew that, or we didn't know that, and like that's convenient. And how did he not get like with the spear to the chest makes sense, but people, not to get dark here, but people not shooting people in the head in shows like you're trying to kill this person, headshot him.
Well, especially at point blank range, like right. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
if you're actually trying to have a firefight with somebody, you don't want to try to shoot them in the head. That's a small target that moves around a lot. That
Yeah.
turns
Right,
out that your torso kind of has to go. You no matter where you go, your torso is going to be the main lagging factor. But
Yeah, center gravity.
it is
That
cute though. I always love that in
yeah.
movies how they get shot and they fall down and they're presumed dead. It's like, my guy, if you get shot in a bulletproof vest and somehow you've lost consciousness, you're gonna die anyway. There's something wrong. Like you're
Yeah,
you're
I
not gonna,
hate kill moves not killing people.
or like the
Mhm.
knockout, man. Oh, I know we're off. I know I'm going off the rails a little bit here, but the knockout in every form of media ever, dude. If you take a punch to the face and you're down for 8 minutes, my guy, you're not going to be the same if you wake up. Like you've gone into a coma, you
Yeah.
have brain
Or they
damage.
wake up the next morning.
Yeah, dude. It's like,
That's brain
don't they take this
damage.
character to a hospital?
Yeah. He
They're
has been
like,
swollen, bro. You got a hematoma. You need to get checked out.
oh, I mean, you're not going to survive it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Your chances of
If
survival have dropped to 1%.
yeah, that's funny. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something I had forgotten. But it's another one of those tropes that we see so often.
Oh yeah.
And what I guess the point that I love about that trope is it's so like built into our popular culture that I have
Like it's so
literally
accepted.
seen tiny dudes. Back when I was in college, you'd see a tiny dude go up to a big dude and punch him across the face. And it might have been the strongest punch in the world. But the big dude just kind of goes, "The fuck was that?" And then, of course, consequences ensue, right?
Yeah.
But but people are just so expectant that like it's easy to one hit punch a guy and he'll be out for 12 hours because I saw it
Yeah.
on Miami Vice.
Well, and also it's become such an accepted thing in media that it's used in storytelling. Like people literally rely on that to tell stories now, where it's like, let's just hit him with the buttstock of my gun and he's gonna wake up, in Cambodia, and 2 seconds ago we were in Texas. It's like, no, that guy's not okay. Um, it's kind of a in the same basket for me as the people go flying when you shoot them trope. That's another one of my personal favorites. I mean, like, I engaged in an argument with a guy one time because he was like, I carry a 45 for stopping power. I'm like, you mean killing power? He's like, no, stopping power. That hits you. That's going to take you off your feet. I'm like, no, it's not, my guy. You should ready yourself for this because you carry this firearm. And if you ever shoot somebody with it, A, that's not going to be the outcome. B, it's going to be a lot more screamy and bleedy than you think it's going to be. And C, you are never going to be the same. Like, you're going to be the one. Emotional damage, like it's, you're gonna be done for, my dude. But yeah, that one is like, it's in the same, it's in the same bin of like action movie tropes for me, where it's like, people like running and diving, and the explosion knocks you down from the concussion. It's like, no, you're dead anyway, dude. Your organs are jelly. Like,
Right?
Which
I love it.
the good thing about it is it does kind of um we the three of us can probably handle and appreciate the realism of all things. Like let's
Yeah.
whatever happens. Like let's just give it to me straight. Let me see how it actually went down. But for a lot of people, I can see the benefit. Like a PG-13 action movie. Like how do you do that other than knocking
Yeah,
people out and then
right.
magically? It's like these guys are professional knockout artists. Like they know exactly what to hit people in the head to get them
Well,
out.
To not kill them from
Yeah.
putting them in a coma.
and the other
Just in
part of
time to
that
death.
is that type of combat is not as exciting as people make
Right.
it out to be. I mean,
Mm.
um, you know, somebody dying from a gunshot wound, and I mean, it's hard not to see it on just regular media nowadays. But, they're not going flying. There's typically not this huge spray and splurt of blood. They take a couple shots, you get some pink mist behind them or red mist, depending on where the bullet hits, and they kind of slump to the ground,
Yeah, it's like
right?
a light switch
Mm.
going off.
Yeah.
Just
Two
turn
people
off.
getting in a fist fight, right? If you ever been outside a nightclub or a bar and two people decide to go at it. There's a lot of wild swings and finally one dude will get clocked and he'll just drop, right?
Yeah.
And he'll be there for 30 seconds or so, and his buddies will get him back up, and he'll be groggy, and they'll wander away. You know, even getting historical with it, right? There's a reason medieval knights carried, an arming sword and a rondel dagger, which a rondel dagger is just like a round dagger that's usually like the blade is like tri-pointed. It was designed, it's like a spike, right? It's designed to get in the niches of armor. The reason why they did that is a lot of these medieval melees like devolved into like two dudes wrestling.
Yep. So they stopped carrying shields and started carrying daggers.
Yeah.
You were wearing the shield. You didn't need a shield.
Right? At a certain point, you were covered with this armor, and yeah, somebody hitting you across the head with the mace is going to hurt. The swords got larger and larger and larger until they were ineffective and people started using halberds and other pole arms.
Knock your opponent around enough to get him on the ground, and if you were actually going to kill him, which is actually relatively rare, yeah, you get your dagger out. Like that was it.
Because the other alternative was to use your armored fist and keep beating him till he just gave up. Right? And that doesn't make for good Hollywood. That doesn't make for exciting, if you go into a game expecting Mordhau or, The Witcher, where you're going to just like whip your sword across and somebody's arm is going to fly off. And what it is it turns into UFC Armored Wrestling Simulator 1352. I mean,
play that game.
I mean, I kind of would too. I'll be honest.
Yeah, but I will say.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I think it's for audience comfort as well. I mean, like, and I do fully embrace that. Like, I don't want my action. I don't want John Wick's dudes to just slump over dead, because that's disturbing, right? People don't want to be disturbed. Like, that would go very much against the kind of ongoing glorification of violence that we enjoy daily, and that wasn't meant to be an indictment, just a statement. But it's like, if everything all of a sudden got real, like, people would respond very differently to your movies. They'd be like, if all of a sudden, John Shootman, trademark by the way, goes out and he's gunning a bunch of dudes down, and they're just all falling over, like, they turn the mounted machine gun on these guys, and they start exploding into gore, basically, because it turns out when you get hit with a mounted machine gun as a person, the end result is not flying backward. It's like, all of a sudden it's a whole different movie. Like now you're watching a horror movie, basically. You're just like, your whole audience would be like, like immediately.
And you're not really getting any relief from the horrors of the real world at that point. Like, I don't want to watch any of the CCTV footage of these school shootings or anything like that. I don't want to see faces of death. I don't want to see people getting actually dismembered. I do want that cinematic distance. I do want to know that I am suspending my disbelief and I am buying into this thing. And to bring it back to a slightly lighter note, we wouldn't have Batman, you know what I mean, if we didn't have that. That dude is grappling people's feet from like so far away to get their bodies to move like that. He's whiplashing those necks so damn hard. Like, one guy gets whipped off his feet. His head hits the ground. He's dead.
I mean, that's not even getting to the fact that he's just a super rich guy beating up a neurodivergent gentleman who happens to wear clown paint. You know what I mean? Like, that's just beating up a homeless dude.
Very, very generous too.
You know what I mean?
He's a rich billionaire picking on the poor of Gotham City who really don't have any other choice.
Yep.
Like they've got crime or starve.
Yep.
Guy's a dick.
Yeah, I really need to. Man, I really need to eat today. I'm just going to go hold somebody up to feed my kid. Oh, thank God, that guy just gave me $20 out of struggle. I can go buy bread. It's like, it's a whole different movie all of a sudden.
Swear to me.
One thing I love about what Dark Knight did do, though, really well, because everyone says, like, Nolan's Batman's the most, quote, realistic. and obviously, or gritty or whatever it is. Obviously, they're not realistic, but I think what he and they did really well was acknowledging certain things that did make it feel real. Like one point was when the M&A lawyer starts to blackmail or tries to blackmail Lucius Fox, saying that you don't think we'd recognize your baby out there pancake cop cars, and then I love Lucius's reaction because I connect with the audience so well when he's like, so let me get this straight. Your client is the richest man in the world, and you believe he secretly beats Vigilante to a pulp with his bare hands, and your plan is to blackmail that man? Like that. That's
That
how
was really
you do.
clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really
Because at
clever.
least
I
it's
love that.
self-aware, right?
Yeah. And the guy and the character in the world gets it. He's like, oh yeah, shit, didn't really think of that. And then all of a sudden we're all bought into this extra heightened level of logic that we're not used to getting in the movie, but then we just got it. And we see that people in the world also have to obey it. And I think that's where the realism comes from.
Yep. It's
Okay.
believable. It makes it believable, I think.
Believable. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. What else you got for us, Con?
Let's see. We've done quite a bit of good ones. There's the passive hero, the person who just, resists the call too much. And it's tricky to necessarily call this too much of a trope or a cliche because it ties really closely to the hero's journey. And so much of the hero's journey, which is arguably the one, if there was one story that everybody's telling, it'd be the hero's journey. And a critical part of the hero's journey is them refusing the call. You have to see that their desire to embark on this crazy adventure is kind of forced upon them or has kind of become unignorable and undismissible, and that they have to confront it one way or another. They have a choice about how they do it, but not confronting it is not a choice. Like they're gonna have to do it. So if you make your character too passive for too long, then you just don't really give a shit about them. You don't really respect them. An example where this does go wrong is if your character doesn't really ever make choices. And I've written stories and read stories where the side character somehow becomes more interesting because you're really giving them all the action, and what you're trying to do is make your main character empathetic by them being kind of a victim to this whole thing. The whole world is happening to them and poor them because how crazy is all this? But when you rob your main character of their agency and you don't get to see them make choices, you don't learn who they are. If you don't learn who they are, you can't empathize, relate, and respect. And then you don't really get their catharsis at the end of it, which is the whole point of any story, really. So you have to make your main character be active and make decisions and happen to the world at some point, and at least in the most important points.
Yeah, and I think where I've seen this one is, and I've seen this mostly in books, not so much in video games, because of course video games tend to be about the action. But I've seen this mostly in books where a character will resist doing something to their legitimate detriment. You know, I don't want to, do something. I don't want to fight back because I'm peaceful. I'm peaceful. I'm peaceful. Well, the orcs have burned your village. They have your wife at knife point. Oh, I'm peaceful. And you're just like, really, dude? And then it turns into like really comically bad revenge arcs. And it's one of those like I personally can't feel I can't empathize with a character who doesn't at least try to survive. A really good game that failed on this was the Outlast games, right? Where your character would like run away from other characters because they were scary and weird and stuff when you're surrounded by like weapons, right? There's a metal bar on the ground there. There's a wooden plank there. Like protect yourself, dude. But no, your only option is to go run into a closet and like try to avoid the jump scare.
Yeah. Oh, jump scares is its whole own trope as well.
Yeah. Right.
I would call that a cliche.
Yeah. And that's fair because some of these do fall into the realm of cliches.
Yeah, I think a cliche is basically any trope that is just brings so much attention to itself and is so known that it just doesn't work and is bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the note of the passive hero, I will say Frodo is that. He really is like his own thing. He really is like along for the ride. And slowly over time, I think what's redeeming about him is he does start to fight and he does start to find a bravery within himself, paired with Sam, who is a great sidekick supporting character. But then he was convinced into action, but then he does have resilience and determination and those sort of things. So he's still actively pushing forward, even though he's being dragged along the ride. So I think that's a good way of doing a passive character there.
So an interesting note about that, though, and not to push back on it, but somebody asked Tolkien after he came out with that, why was Frodo so weak?
Mm.
And Tolkien came back with, here's a guy who is actively wearing and fighting constantly this artifact of this evil entity that corrupts everybody else.
Mm.
Every Gandalf is afraid to touch it.
Mm.
And here's Joe Everybody, and he's fighting this while making a journey across the world to throw this evil artifact into a volcano. He is volunteering to walk to the most dangerous place there on the planet while fighting this evil artifact the entire way. I don't think you can call him passive.
I think the passiveness is that he did not set this journey up for himself. That it happened to him. It wasn't that something happened. He was like, "I'm gonna go take this ring to Sauron's whatever the lava." It was put upon him, and so in that sense, that he's passive in how the plot was initiated, but he's definitely active in his resistance to the evil. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes us like him and respect him is that even though this happened to him, he's still standing up and he's still
Yeah.
meeting the moment. And his strength is um, in contrast to everybody else's form of strength. Everybody else around him is strong with
Yep.
some sort of physical ability or some sort of knowledge. And Frodo has none of that. He's innocent, sheltered, and weak physically, but he has strength of heart, and that is what's so special about the hobbits. Is
Yep.
they're innocent, and that's actually what keeps him alive. Is he holds on to the pureness of his
Mm-hmm.
heart and soul, and therein lies his strength. But it's still
Yeah.
all happening to him.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. It does fit thematically with the hobbits as a race, though. Race, species, whatever you want to call
Yeah. So, which I'm glad you pointed out because it's important to note that passive here doesn't necessarily mean weak. And I imagine Tolkien's answer was saying that, well, he's not weak. He's actually quite strong in
Yeah.
for those characteristics. So while he may be dragged on the ride, he is going to still play a very crucial part. And then even in Fellowship, they're all fighting over the ring, and he says, "I'll take it."
Yeah.
And so he does become active pretty quickly, or I guess at a significant point becomes active, and you're like, and Gandalf's expression just nails it. I think it nails what we're feeling. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, he was almost out of this. We wanted him to be free, and the deal was he would go home, and then he chooses his own forward adventure. I think that's a
Yeah.
really,
I mean, the
really
dude
strong.
just got stabbed by the Lord of the Ring Wraiths.
Yeah.
Almost died, was sitting there spitting up whatever. Like, I mean, whoever did makeup and effects for that movie did a real good job of portraying
Cool.
him as a dude who's about to kick the bucket.
Oh yeah, And hint. Oh god, what that movie's just so good, top to bottom. I love it.
Yeah.
All of them.
All right. So moving on from that, what else do you have for us?
I guess it segues well into bad exposition. There's a common misnomer about what exposition is. I think when people say, "Oh, this film has a lot of exposition," what they're really saying is bad exposition. Otherwise, exposition is literally all you're there to do. As an audience member, you're coming to see somebody make choices, and as a writer, you're there to expose who a character is through their choices. Where good writing comes in is setting up a series of circumstances that force this character into really difficult choices. And when they make one, whether you like it or not, you kind of respect that they've made a decision because it's such a high stakes scenario. And so that is exposition. You do want to do exposition. What you don't want to do is serve it up and patronize the audience by slapping them in the face and saying things like, "You've been my friend of 5 years and you would never do a thing like this." And, no one talks like that. And that's just so common. I see it just all the time in it's AAA movies and all this stuff. Sometimes it seems like there's no way around it, and now that I've become more familiar with the craft of writing in my own efforts, I see kind of the problems that these large movies run into, and I'm like, I don't blame them necessarily, but I still felt it. It was still there. And there are some people who just are entirely unsophisticated. And it seems like some people don't even try to avoid the bad exposition. They're just lazy about it and like, I don't know how else to get through this. Let's just have them all say it all.
When the guy walks in the room and says, "Ah, look there, it's Steve, my good friend, whom I went into combat with on many occasions, whose mother I am good friends with, and whose dog I pet frequently." It's like, okay, dude, like,
Yeah.
it's interesting too that you'd mentioned that, because in my particular form, and I'm not talking about my literary work, I'm talking about my tabletop work here.
Yeah.
The nice thing is I can introduce something, like I can hint at a thing, and the players can like kind of choose if they want to I guess double click on that, so to speak, right? Like they can
Learn
just
more.
like ignore it, or they can be like, wait a minute. So it's like I'll have a character who like they'll be talking to this NPC having a good time, and somebody will walk by and they'll be like, ugh, and he'll spit on the ground. They're like, do we lean into this, or do we just say, not my bag, not my monkeys? You know what I mean? Like sometimes they'll be like, what's that about? I ask him, what's your deal? And he says, well, oh, that guy, stole my goat. I can't prove it, but I know he's got my goat somewhere. Bam, you got a mission. You can, as the players, if you want to dive into finding out if this guy really has this other guy's goat and repairing that relationship, if he doesn't, cool, do it. If you want to go there and just kill him and then see if there's a goat, all right, murder hobos, you do you. But it's like it's one of those things where I think it's different. Like exposition in tabletop is actually much more organic and it's easier because they don't have to be told anything. They don't have to know anything if they don't want to. So my job's really easy in that respect. When it comes to writing, yeah, that's a little bit harder. Like oh man, yeah, I respect how hard it is.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have to get the information out somehow. I think what I've done is if I just can't get past it and I don't know how to explain this stuff, I will write the cliche, I'll write the shitty exposition, and then I'll go back and sort of be like, okay, well, one, no one talks that way, so what's a version of how people actually would talk? And two, can I have somebody else maybe explain it? Can I just show instead of telling? And funnily enough, actually, you'll notice a lot of movies from the 90s will do this exposition in the opening credits. And it'll be a long one take shot of a camera moving around a room showing all their family pictures and their posters on the wall and their awards they won in high school and all that.
Picture of them in the military with their other buddies.
Yeah. And
I do like that. Yeah, I like that better than this reminds me of the time in Cambodia. Well, I don't know, I'm on Cambodia tonight, but it's just like that one actually kind of drives me up the wall a little bit too. Like I always thought that it would be nice in a movie, especially if you have two guys who are just kind of gruff in general and you wonder what their relationship is, and you just have a lingering shot of like both of their forearms and you see that they've got the same tattoo. Be like, oh, they go back a ways. All right. You know what I mean? Like this whole show don't tell thing. Like there's so many clever shots you could use. Like I swear, like tabletopping has made me like the weirdest director in the world if I ever got to film something. But but yeah, no, I respect the craft. I do. I mean, like it's one of those things where I think it is. There's a lot of learning involved, and there's a lot of pitfalls that we all, walk into. Like you were saying, a real common film school thing is the waking from a dream.
Mm.
It's Saturday. I don't really have a quiz today. Oh man, it was all a dream. Like,
Yeah.
I think you do have to explore through that, and I don't hate on, newer, like more fresh to the game, the new blitz, the neophyte, if you will, writer who's like learning the craft. Like, yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. Like being good at writing or storytelling is it's not just you walk up and do it. I mean, maybe for some people, I'm not saying like, but I assume they're an infinitesimally small percentage of the population.
Well, I envy them. I think write through the cliche and then rewrite it. It's easier to react to bad writing than it is to think your way around it the first time. So do the bad writing and then rewrite it. But the transition, I have a question actually about that. So the show don't tell works for film because it's a visual medium. So you are better off leaning into the medium and showing instead of telling. It works better. In terms of a video game medium, what is that equivalent? Is it an interactive thing? And if that's the case, how do you interact instead of telling to reveal?
Man, there is so many different ways that this has been done. I can think of an action game like the Doom reboot, where not the newest ones, but the one where they had all these little data pads that would play, or you'd see emails, or they'd play, somebody's log or something, but they were kind of secondary to the action, right? Other games do this with your exposition as a part of dialogue, and that dialogue is a part of the gameplay. So think of just about any BioWare game ever made, right? They typically have some, because RPG players tend to like getting into the lore. It's kind of part and parcel with what goes into an RPG game. So they tend to have some method that you can just straight up read the lore. I think in Mass Effect it was literally called the Codex. And as you found something in the world, it would fill out that codex for you. But you didn't need to look at it ever, because you would get all the exposition you needed from your interactions with characters, and they were generally meaningful, right? I have seen some games that just give you the wall of text exposition. The worst ones don't let you skip past it. So you're sitting like watching a cutscene where a character reads from a literal block of text. The text is so large it's covering the screen, and you're hitting escape. You're like alt tabbing. You're like, how the hell do I skip this thing? It's akin to getting a death by PowerPoint presentation. It really is.
Oh, do me a favor, AJ. When you make your game like in a release state, can you just set the goddamn volume? I'm sorry, I'm trying to quit saying that. The gosh damn volume to 50 out of the box, please. Can you like find a way?
So
please find a way. I'm so tired of not only the unskippable cutscene, but now I'm like ripping my headset off because I literally am getting tinnitus because they're like 100% volume. It's like, Jesus.
So
developers, please.
That is a trope. That is an absolute cliche trope. You name it. For whatever reason, that volume is cranked to 100, probably because the developer studio paid a lot of money for that theme song, and they want people to play it, or they want people to hear it, right?
Hear the rest of the game afterwards, like.
So what we're doing actually is, how the games have that little scene that's like, hey, set your slider here to adjust your gamma.
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing for the volume, but the volume starts at all the way down.
Absolute heroes.
And it's going to be adjust the music so that it's at a comfortable level. Go.
That is perfect and how it should be, and now I feel better having heard it. There's actually one more form of storytelling in games too. That's my favorite actually, because I'm a big Dark Souls nerd, Elden Ring is probably, in my opinion, one of the best games ever made. Environmental storytelling. So this is the other side of it. Con, I don't know if you've played Dark Souls or Elden Ring.
No, I've heard of its brilliance though.
So yeah, they only have environmental storytelling. You learn almost nothing about the world. There is no data logs. There is no character to really explain anything to you. You actually can look at what's happening in the world around you in any given area, and you can piece together what's happening. And it's like designed to kind of make you make your own backstory for some things. And the reason is the developer of the game actually, he used to get fantasy books that were in English, and he was Japanese. He couldn't read it. And so he would actually try to piece together how this lore worked without being able to read anything. And he brought that into his storytelling later. So that's why there's no exposition in these games, but there's infinite numbers of, YouTube series explaining all the interconnections between the various parts, especially Elden Ring. I mean, there's probably 100 hours of media explaining that game world. And like they give you like a little bit, you get little dashes here and there. Like when you talk to an NPC or before a fight, sometimes a boss will say something to you that feels particularly meaningful, but it'll still be like without really much context because they just assume you know what they're talking about. And also they just don't care if you know. Like some of them are just babbling because they've just gone totally mad. And it's super interesting. Like environmental storytelling in gaming is one of those things that I don't think you can do in any other medium hardly. Like maybe in tabletop, but I cheat. My storytelling is all cheating. So
can I put you on the spot for an example, either from Elden Ring or even from tabletop of environmental exposition?
yeah, absolutely. So in Elden Ring, you find out that this one particular key. So you have your Elden Lords, right? They're like the all-powerful dudes in this world, or were at least. And one of them, he's kind of like rotting away and like turning into kind of a bizarre, like we'll call it a tree similar thing, like he's tree like almost in how he's decaying. All over the world you find these like these gross looking trees growing out of stuff with this like these eyeballs in them, right? Well, that eye looks just like his little insignia that he has. So the idea is that while he's down in the earth turning into this big blob looking tree thing that just sits in the ground and looks sad because he's lost agency basically, his roots grow throughout the entire world. So it gives you the idea that like he's been here for a long time. And also he not only is he immobilized, he's seeing everything fall apart around him. So it's like a weird, like kind of a hell analogy.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's one badly explained example of how good the storytelling is in that game.
That's great.
And you would never know it. You could just run around the world and be like, oh, spooky tree environment. Okay, cool. You'd be like, oh, look, there's a tree branch growing out of the side of this castle. Oh, look, I'm out in the middle of nowhere in the swamp. There's a tree branch, like growing out of the ground. Like they make it obvious to where it stands out a little bit, but unless you're looking for it, you will just walk right past it as just being cool scenery.
That's great. So then you can discover it when you do figure it out. It feels like a genuine discovery.
Oh yeah, the way the creatures relate to each other, the way the Elden Lords relate to each other, like it's all weirdly, you can tell that the development studio had an actual storyboard of how all these things interact, and like you can totally tell when they were designing an enemy type to express some part of the game world or some part of like the kind of fall of grace kind of a story that Elden Ring is. You have these people that turn into like pseudo dragons or like proto dragon kind of things, because they adhere to this way of the dragon type of a thing, and eventually they turn into these like broken ass lizards. Well, the thing is, you are immortal now, but you never get wings. You're never a real dragon. So it's like there's all these themes of like self-imposed torment in the series. So it's incredible. It's really, I would firmly encourage, even if you don't ever want to play the games because they are indecently difficult at times, 100% watch some of those videos because the way the lore fits together is nuts.
And I think you hit on a really cool point there of they do a good job of showing and not telling.
Well, yeah, there's no telling hardly.
Yeah, and it's part of it is what's going to create an aggressive user community that goes back and forth and is interested in what they're seeing. The other part of it is going to just give that individual user, those little snippets here and there that makes the world make a little bit more sense, even if it's completely wrong, right? But that's all that really matters is that user's perception.
Sure. Well, and it builds communities too, because you
Yeah.
have all these people sharing their ideas of how it fits together, and there are certain ones that become accepted and certain ones that are argued about. And that's another part of the whole like going on YouTube and just watching some videos about this stuff. And yeah, it's really genius. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, I won't bore you anymore.
Well, I love what you said about the community aspect, that people are sort of sharing notes. It feels like peer review, and it feels like it's a scientific process where people are
Yep.
observing the nature of this thing, comparing notes, and trying to form conclusions together about what this is.
Yeah, it's a truly unique animal. This particular game franchise.
On that note, the scientific method is something I'm personally just very fond of, not just because of my science background, but I think all humans think that way. I don't think the scientific method was something we crafted. I think it was a manifestation of how we think, how humans actually form thoughts, and the fact that a game can induce that process, I think is brilliant, and probably is testament to why people are so attracted to it, is because it's falling into natural human thinking patterns.
Well, yeah,
in
and I
natural
mean,
order.
well, and it calls back to again the developer of all of these stories, if you want to call them that. These world stories is again just having books that he couldn't read, but really liking the pictures of dragons. You know, like
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so George R. R. Martin is the writer of Elden Rings, right?
he helped
Yeah.
write some of the story.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, again, like the story,
got it.
but the
And
actual oh god, god.
well, to talk to Khan's point there, you know, where you say the scientific method is, kind of the way people think, right? And so one of the things we've talked about pretty consistently tonight is when you have that gameplay experience of, hey, I was able to experiment a little bit. I tried something new. I was rewarded for it. And it feels unique, and I wasn't guided through it. I didn't have somebody give me the glowy spot. I didn't have mindless exposition telling me how to solve this. I did this, right? That's when you get that maximum dopamine. I accomplished something. This is
Yeah,
really cool. I want to accomplish the next thing, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think especially in terms of game dev, you're right in line with what helps create some of the strongest, most visceral responses for positive game dev experiences.
And if you can then evolve those things too, so in that method, you form a conclusion, right? In that discovery, you
Hmm.
form some conclusion about what you did or what you can do, and that forms a slight rule about the world. Just like actual science, we move forward with what we know, and keep testing it. And the best thing is to realize, oh, we were kind of wrong actually
Yep.
about part of it, and we were learning more. And that's an even more exciting part. Is like, oh shit, there's more. There's another door to go through, and it's actually going to further inform what we thought we knew about this thing. And that I think that just furthers that dopamine thing of like, oh, there's more, there's more, there's more. So if there's
Yeah.
ever a way to really be so aware of what rules you're establishing in your player's mind that you can then take those at a later time and evolve them and recontextualize them and be like, oh, I thought I knew this rule and it was working for me, but I realize there's more to it now, and now I've matured and I feel
Hmm.
wiser.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think
I
that's super
yeah.
strong.
I very much try to do that in world build. And actually, it's funny you asked what with George Martin, what he did with that game. He was one of the world builders. Miyazaki is the one that like does all of the work, but he was part of the world building process. And I think that a lot of that shows like a lot of his love for. I'm not going to kid you. Like hearing his response and like his reactions to like the experience of building this game, the world building part of it, like gave me a whole new renewed respect for that guy because world building is my kink. Like that is my bag right there. And I love doing what you're talking about, especially in world building. Like, there's a floating city in my game that nobody's heard hide nor hair of, and there's a band of people that follow it around, waiting for pieces of it to fall off to rummage through the ruins. and eventually the players will be able to get up there and see what's actually there. But as of right now, to the whole world, it's just abandoned. They don't know where everybody went. So they're going to discover where everybody went if they decide to go up there. But it's really nice to have things like that, and that's been going on. This game's been going for months now, months and months, in fact, and they've gotten nowhere closer to it. It might be 2 years of playing this game before they decide to go up there. And when they do, their minds are going to be blown because they're going to be like, "Oh, there's actually an answer." And I think that that's stuff like that too. I love building things like that into my game worlds. Rather it's a storytelling beat or a progression beat or whatever. Like, it's just my favorite.
Right.
Yeah. I think not to open another can of worms, but it made me think of something about like managing expectations and this whole like creature feature phenomena where like not seeing the monster, like the whole Jaws thing, it's scary.
Oh, yeah.
The imagination is scary, so you don't show something, but then you run into a problem, which is you have to decide: are you eventually going to show this thing? And if this is what the movie or story is about, then you kind of owe them that. And then what's happened is you spent all this time letting people imagine how scary this thing is. When you do finally reveal it, you either have to exceed or subvert that expectation. And that can be hard because you've given people all this time to imagine it on their own. And that's the greatest fear they could possibly have, is their own personal fear about the thing. So how do you meet everybody's expectation or exceed that? I don't know if anybody necessarily has an answer for that because people have been failing at that in creature features.
Yeah.
You mean specifically with the creature feature?
I think it's inflamed in those things because it's very specifically about not knowing what the monster is and then seeing a monster, and so you have to owe the monstrousness. And can you really compete with anybody's individual imagination? I don't know.
Well, and I think in game dev you have a very like succinct example where this maybe goes well or goes poorly, where you can spend all the time, and not to pick on monsters, but you take a game like The Witcher, right, where you have this investigative portion that leads you up to this monster, right? And when you get there, and especially if your character is high leveled and you're more powerful than the monster, and this big bad guy rushes out and you just like whip your sword a couple times, it's dead. Like, wow, is that disappointing. But on the same token, you have a good fight, you've done your preparation, you've obeyed the rules of the game, and you came out ahead. That's where it feels good. Now, most games struggle with the problem of scale, right? You're looking over your character's shoulder, and a big monster doesn't really look that big. That's a great kind of line into something we're doing by obeying that rule of scale. It's not going to be, and I think I talked about this 2 weeks ago, where Skyrim, you have this bus-sized dragon, and here you are killing it with just a couple hits to the head, right? If you obey the rule of scale, not only do you make the stakes far higher for your players, because Joe Average Swordsman is not going to take down a bus-sized dragon. I don't really care who you are. But you also make that creature reveal worth it, as long as you're, staying true to the rules that you set in the beginning.
Yeah, I feel like that could be, well, it's proven to be challenging for some people narratively and in video games too, like to even obey your own rules. I've felt that in my own stories where I get to a point I'm like, oh, this is what needs to happen here, and then someone will immediately be like, yeah, but that can't because of everything else that's ever happened in the story. I'm like, fuck, like you're right. That's the best I've got here, and it subverts all of my own things. So, but that can be good sometimes. Like the whole hero thing is two ideas here. One idea: writers are not the people who have the ideas; they're the ones who take the time to figure them out. I don't know who said that or where I heard that from, but I've latched onto that.
And where that gave me solace was this idea of how do you create a compelling hero and how do you create a compelling resolve. I think one of the most visceral things is kind of like I was saying earlier, a hero that figures out the solution faster than you can is often what makes you respect them because you're like, holy shit, I never would have figured that out, or I never would have figured that out in time the way that they did, and that's what makes you like them. So how do you get to that point? As a writer, I think you write yourself into a corner where you sort of write yourself within all the boundaries of your rules to a place where you don't even know how you're going to get forward, and then you take the time to figure it out. It might take you weeks or months or years or however. But when you do, if you've done it well, the audience will witness your month's work of logic solving. They will see that happen in a couple of seconds or within a minute. And to compress all that into such a short time, that's what makes them the hero. It's like, holy
Hmm.
shit, how did they figure that out so quickly? I don't know. It's unfathomable. They're a hero. That's the feeling. So I don't really know where I was going with that. But in terms of managing expectations, like, yeah, you build it up to a point where you do reveal something so quickly and so profound that nobody really knows how you got there, or
Oh yeah, no.
nobody could imagine themselves figuring it out that quickly.
Yeah, you see, for me, I manage those expectations by um, I have the luxury of letting them explore things and watching their reactions and tailoring certain elements to their reactions. So if I think they're going to think something's lame, I can just work around it. If I think they're think something's awesome that I didn't even have written in, I can just put it in there. So that's nice. When it comes to showing the creature, actually, that one always interests me because I feel like if I had a movie, like, it's a monster movie, right? Monster trying to get you, it's scary, you never really see it. At the very end, if they overcome the thing, I think it would be very much like most of it's still off camera. Like you'd see its arms maybe, or you'd see some piece of it, and then like I would just totally blue balls the audience. Like I would have like
Mhm.
a panning shot of like the characters in focus talking about the thing on the ground, but I would still leave it deliberately out of focus because I think that would drive a lot of people to still imagine it as something terrifying, and they're you'd lead to a lot of people on the internet talking about, you'd have these people like drawing outlines around it to try to like tell you what it really looks like. It's like it's
I
like
feel that's what we've lost the smoke monster.
yeah, things in effect like that. I appreciate that more, right? That sticks with me better, like because I know what Godzilla looks like, but the smoke monster, yeah, right. Granted, Lost kind of went a little off the rails, but what do you do with that
Yeah,
show? What do you do with
yeah.
that show, right? Like,
But I guess they told us from the beginning the show was called Lost, so we shouldn't have expected much else.
I was lost. They did nail it. So how are we looking? Is that pretty much everything? Was there anything else we wanted to talk about, or probably wrap this bad boy up pretty soon, eh?
Yeah, we've been going at it for a minute.
Yeah, I
Been
think
a
we
while.
probably could. I guess, what I'd like to do is, say thanks for the people who stuck with us um throughout this. It's always fun getting people, such as you two together and really working through all of this media, all of this breadth of, everything you see from tabletop to television to, and bringing it and kind of looking at video games in that light, right? I don't think that happens enough. And I think it's definitely informative for me. And to be fair, I take this and I, run it straight into FromLight, which allows us to, make a better game. Because at the end of the day, as developers who are developing for players, we want them to enjoy it. We want them to love it. Um, but so appreciate the people that stuck with us for this 3.5 hours,
Mind-numbing amount of time. What absolute heroes? That's
right?
ridiculous.
But yeah, stay tuned. Next time, about 2 weeks from now, which should be we're gonna call it the 17th. And stay on the socials. You can go, check out on Twitter, where I'm sure a lot of you found us at, but at AJ at Odin. So there's two ats in there. That's funny, but not actually. I'll just throw
Does
it
that
in the
mean your
chat.
address is an AT-AT?
Yeah, right. AT.
Is that a
I walk.
word? Yeah.
I walk
Yeah.
slowly.
Oh yeah, I dropped that.
There you
dropped
go.
that.
That's where we're posting a lot of our game dev updates, but also kind of the recurring schedule to this little Devcast here. And as we refine it more in the future, we're probably going to put out a podcast version as well. So with that said, unless you guys got anything to add.
Well, great combo. Love it.
Yeah. Is the next show the one where we tell them that we're all actually AIs that you wrote, or are we saving that for later?
We should probably wait till another show does that.
Okay.
But
fine,
we
yeah.
will get you a mocap suit so you can be a 15-year-old waifu girl.
Oh, my dreams are coming
Hey,
true.
that was
Wow.
my role. What the fuck?
No, you don't get that role. You just have to simp me. Sorry.
That's
Wait,
All right.
we can't say that word on Twitch anymore, can we?
No, you cannot. All
No,
right,
I forgot.
everybody,
Can't do that.
stay safe, stay happy, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care.
Peace.
Good night.